Monster Synthesis Master. Chapter 481 Rebellious Young Man. Link looked at the silver hand, who was talking to himself, and the light in his eyes visibly dimmed. He had been looking forward to having a legendary general under him, but now it seemed like he had a lunatic. Link thought for a moment and muttered, "Say, don't tell me that you've been hitting him so hard that he's become stupid." Seeing Silverhand's crazed look, John didn't have much confidence and hesitated. "Probably not, Ying Luo." He was indeed not aggressive now, but he was not normal either. If you round it up, he was basically trash. Outside the operating room, the macaw wished it could stick its head on the glass and watch the show with its teeth bared. At that time, it felt that this was not reliable. Humans were such complicated creatures. If they could simply use programs to counteract, then they were machines. Of course, it was very satisfied with Silverhand's current performance. The macaw adjusted the camera rooster on its head. It had recorded all of this. When the Silverhand returned to normal, it would be convenient for extortion. The macaw was like a scorpion's sh*t, the only one on Wasteland who dared to extort a legendary NPC. Very quickly, Helen raised her voice. "I found it. The Purge Agreement and the Law of a Beautiful World offset each other, but I forgot to consider Silverhand's personality. Now it's his personality that's at work, and under the mutual checks and balances of the agreement and law, his personality is magnified." Helen called Link and John over and pointed at the image on the screen. "Look, his brain activity is abnormally active now, and the entire brain area is mobilized, far beyond ordinary people. What should we do in this situation?" John hurriedly asked. Helen shook her head helplessly. "It's the personality gene from the DNA during cloning. It can't be erased. And the agreement and the law just happen to offset each other, causing the power of character to gain the upper hand and amplify. If the effect of the law is improved, believe me, the silver hand will become even more exaggerated than it is now." John's brows furrowed slightly as he looked at Silverhand, who was intoxicated with his self-admiration in the mirror, and his face turned red in shame. Link's eyes narrowed into a line, his eyes full of drama. He poked John with his elbow and said meaningfully, "It's your own personality, yo yo yo." After hearing Helen's explanation, Link finally understood why Silverhand had such a reaction. John was a painter himself, proud and unruly, so few people could catch his eye. He seemed to be getting along with Link because he acknowledged Link's strength. In the eyes of outsiders and players, he was still an elegant painter, the #1 assassin on Wasteland. Now that Silverhand had magnified these qualities, he was a little crazy. The pursuit of art and excessive conceit, weren't these John's enlarged personality? John covered his forehead in shame. This was not the answer he wanted, but he could only accept the reality before him. Moreover, according to Helen, the current situation could only be guided later on, and there was no way to achieve it overnight through a program. John felt that his reputation would soon be destroyed. "You said you're an artist," said Link, trying to communicate with him. "What kind of artist are you?" Upon seeing Link, Silverhand's expression did not change much. "Oh," he said. "You're Link, the supreme leader of the Shitu. I know you. I've been sparring with you a few days ago." Link's eyes brightened. Although the Silverhand spoke in a crazed manner, he did not seem to be stupid. His logic was clear and his mind was clear. Furthermore, the events of the past few days were still fresh in his memory. However, when Link was mentioned, there was no excitement, anger, or hatred in the Silverhand's eyes. This made Link overjoyed. It seemed that with good guidance, the Silverhand could still turn over a new leaf. Silverhand was silent for a moment. He raised his head to look at the fill light on the operating table and muttered to himself, "In my mind, there is light and heat. The sun is the truth I seek. I'm not sure what kind of artist this is, but I'm willing to sacrifice myself for the truth and put it into practice for my instinctive desire. Light and heat. Why would someone pursue these things for no reason? At this moment, Helen seemed to have realized something. She whispered to Link, "Light and heat, this is probably the environment of the culture chamber during cloning." There was a light in the cultivation chamber that simulated a sunlight environment. These memories should be the subconscious records of the body when it was just formed. In the end, it will form a dream similar to the subconscious, and it will appear repeatedly. Link nodded to show that he understood. He continued to probe, "What do you think of the machinery faith?" Upon hearing the words machinery faith, Silverhand's body clearly froze for a moment. "The machinery faith has given me a new lease of life, but the doctrine of the machinery faith seems a little extreme. Machines are just tools to transform the world, not the ultimate goal of transforming the world." Silverhand raised his new mechanical arm and clenched his fist to feel the power. Other than the fact that it was a little difficult to move and the arm was not as smooth as before, both the strength and the sense were satisfactory. Silverhand suddenly turned around and pointed at John with his mechanical arm. "It's you. You're the one who did it 300 times a day, right?" John's expression didn't change. With his hands in front of his chest, he stared at Silverhand and walked to him. The atmosphere suddenly became heavy and even a little tense. Even Silverhand's eyes became sharp. Helen's body was stiff, and her lips were trembling. Only when Link's large, warm hand touched her shoulder did Helen finally break free from the two powerful beings' opposing auras. Helen let out a breath of air. The terrifying aura from earlier had made it hard for her to breathe. Even her expression was a little stifled. She raised her head and thanked Link in a low voice. "General," Helen mumbled, "they won't fight, right?" Link just smiled and didn't answer. Silverhand walked to John's side and raised the newly installed mechanical arm in front of John. The atmosphere suddenly froze. The two of them were having a battle of aura, and a strong wind was produced in the fully sealed operating room. Helen and the attending doctors' hearts were in their throats. Outside the operating room, the macaw was beaming with joy. There was going to be a good show to watch. John was the #1 assassin on Wasteland Planet, and Silverhand was his clone, who was as strong as him. When two legends fought, no matter how big the place was, it wouldn't be enough for them to cause a ruckus. If they fought, it would definitely be earth-shattering. Just as everyone was silent, Silverhand made his move. His hanging fist suddenly opened up into a palm, and a strong wind blew past. Immediately after, an action that made everyone's eyes pop out of their sockets appeared. Silverhand placed the mechanical arm on John's shoulder and smiled brightly. This little brother was not sensible in the past, but it's all thanks to Big Brother's help and care. I only want to say that you did well. Fortunately, these hand blades didn't cause me to make a big mistake." He had been brewing and fighting for half a day, and this was the result? Helen looked up at Link in disbelief, seeking an answer. She couldn't believe that Silverhand would look like this after she added the law of a beautiful world to check and balance him. When she thought of Silverhand's current character being an enlarged John, her image of John collapsed. Link held back his laughter. He had already seen through the Heaven's Son's insight that there was no killing intent between the two. It was more of a bluff, so they couldn't really fight. However, even Link had not expected such a dramatic turn of events. It could only be said that John was indeed a mysterious man who could surprise people at any time. Even John's defense was broken by Silverhand. This guy's thoughts and actions were too erratic, and ordinary people couldn't keep up with his rhythm. The atmosphere in the operating room was funny and awkward, but Silverhand didn't feel it at all. Link waved his hand, signaling for the doctors and nurses to leave. Then, he pulled Helen's ponytail and left the operating room with her, leaving the two alone. Judging from John and Silverhand's state, they should still have something to say. As he walked out of the operating room, Link saw the narcissistic macaw lying on the glass, baring its teeth. At this moment, the macaw was squawking and its expression was trembling. It was stunned by the pairing of John and Silverhand. Lin Kei's brows were tightly knitted together. His expression was as if he was talking about the train, the old man, and the phone. He walked up and patted the back of the macaw's head and asked, "What are you screaming for, like an idiot?" The macaw suddenly came back to its senses and its eyes were extremely alert. However, when she met Link's suspicious gaze, she immediately softened, knowing that something was wrong. "Oh no, I was so focused on kowtowing that I didn't even notice Link's arrival. My paparazzi plan is going to be exposed." The macaw chuckled and stretched out its wings to scratch its head. "I was too worried about this failure. Seeing that Silverhand has returned to normal, I'm relieved. I'm so touched that I'm making a scene." As it spoke, the macaw even squeezed out a few drops of tears. Lin Ke looked at the camera rooster on the macaw's head. Combined with the creepy smile just now, he felt that something was wrong. "If you care, why are you still wearing a camera?" The macaw straightened its camera and answered smoothly, "I just want to record this meaningful scene." Then, she started to act innocent and cute, twisting her body. "What bad intentions can I have? I just want to record this touching scene." Link sighed helplessly. He thought that the macaw was not an insensible bird, so he didn't bother too much with it. "You can play around, but you can't make any mistakes as an agent of Monster Security Company." The macaw saluted in a serious manner, and there was a trace of relief in its seriousness. It had finally passed. Through the glass, John and Silverhand were talking in the operating room. John's expression was calm, but Silverhand's expression changed several times, from a smile to a cold expression, from a serious expression to a big smile. The span of his expression was so big that it made people speechless. The macaw's words were particularly apt. Silverhands had the qualifications to be a great stage play actor. Link agreed. The Silverhand's current image was gradually becoming well developed from a killing machine. Lunatics, great artists, pursuers of light and heat, actors full of performance, Ying Luo. After a while, John pushed the door open and walked out of the operating room. He let out a long sigh and said, "I've talked to him and he agreed to work for Shandu. I only have one request. I want a villa with a swimming pool and a view of the sunrise and sunset." Link chuckled. He was describing the silver hand, but he looked at John. "Is this hedonism?" John shrugged helplessly. The current situation had caught him off guard. Killing people was as easy as drinking water for him, but when it came to dealing with Silverhand, he seemed clumsy, like an elder brother who was worried about his younger brother. Link patted his shoulder and consoled, "I'll just take it as Ying Luo accumulating experience in interacting with children in the future." After a while, Silverhand also came out of the operating room and walked to the two. "I've already told Link about your request," John said. "He's agreed to it. From now on, you'll live a good life in the Sand City and try to integrate into society." Silverhand clicked his tongue a few times and stared at John, sizing him up. "Pursuing the path of art is lonely. I don't want to integrate into society and become ordinary. He's not like you, from a king of assassins to a homemaker, a living example of a person whose edge has been smoothed out by society." Qian. John was rendered speechless. Link quickly patted John's back, signaling with his eyes that he should not argue with Silverhand. The current state of Silverhand was exactly the same as a rebellious teenager. Unconventional, sharp-tongued, and ridiculed everyone he saw. John took a few deep breaths and waved his hand. "I'll leave the Silverhand to you then. I'll come over to take a look at it from time to time. Call me if you have any problems." His tone was very much like a parent who had entrusted their child to the teacher. Just one sentence missing. Not long after John left, he suddenly turned back and said to Link, "If Silverhand does anything out of line, just hit him directly. You don't have to show any mercy, and you don't have to care about my face." Silverhand's expression was stiff. He snorted and turned around. John waved his hand and left. He hadn't been home for about a week, and now he was eager to go home to see Marcia and complain to his lover about the rebellious young man Silverhand. After John left, Link said to Silverhand, I don't care what agreement you have with John, but since you're staying, I have to make some rules with you. I'll provide you with a villa, and if you need anything on a daily basis, as long as it's not too excessive, someone will also provide it for you. However, since you've just joined Shandu, I'll still arrange for someone to analyze your behavior and determine if your mental state and thinking have returned to normal. There won't be any restrictions on your movements during normal times. I'll inform you when I need you to participate in an operation. Link then took out a voice-projecting bug from his pocket. This is a sound bug. As long as you wear it in your ear, you can make a call with just a light tap before making a call. You can think of it as a biological phone. Silverhand took the sound transmission bug in disgust. The sticky feeling made his mouth twitch slightly, but he still tried to put it on his ear. Sensing that the sound bug had entered the ear-like mode, Silverhand gently pointed at the sound bug and said, "Call John." A moment later, he heard John's voice. "Hello. I'll go to my house for dinner some other day and meet my sister-in-law." Silverhand's eyes lit up. "Get lost." Silverhand didn't panic at John's violent hanging up of the sound transmission bug. He took out the sound transmission bug and put it in his palm. He looked at the trembling sound transmission bug with interest, smiled, and said to himself, "This little thing is interesting." Chapter 482 The Claws That Extend to Wasteland Planet. The Silverhand put away the sound bug as if by magic and stared at Link for a while. Helen was so scared that she stood behind Link. The competition between the big shots was too scary. It was not something she could handle. After a long while, Silverhand smiled. "You're quite an interesting person. No wonder even the mechanical pioneers can't beat you. It's coming, it's coming." He then waved his hand and left the underground research center. Link's lips curled up. It seemed that this rebellious teenager had a clear mind under his unruly appearance. Even his memories of being created by the mechanical pioneers were still intact. After Helen joined the Law of a Beautiful World, she could now judge what had happened to her in the past from a neutral point of view. Link looked at the Silverhand's disappearing figure and sighed, "Some people don't look as simple as they look." Helen stuck her head out timidly with a wronged expression and sobbed, "General, did I mess up this time?" This time, the Silverhand's rehabilitation plan was led by Helen, and Dave and Ludwig only gave some technical guidance. Now that they had parted on bad terms, Helen felt that it was because of her thoughtlessness that she had only considered the conflicting procedures and ignored the influence of human nature, which led to the current situation. Link rubbed Helen's head and smiled. "You've done very well this time. The modification of the Silverhand is more successful than expected." Helen puffed up her cheeks and said angrily, "But Silverhand is weak now." "You have to know that the Silverhand is now John," Link said earnestly. Although he seemed crazy, he was more clear-headed than anyone else. Only two extremes can be called a contradiction, and you've only seen the crazy side of him. Helen seemed to have learned a lot from Link. Link and the macaw walked out of the underground research center. After some thought, he said, "You heard the promise I made to Silverhand just now, right? I'll leave the matter of arranging a villa for Silverhand in Shenmue City to you." The macaw's eyes brightened. This mission gave it the opportunity to come into contact with Silverhand alone. Wouldn't it be a good opportunity to get closer and then extort him? The macaw grinned and raised its eyebrows. It was overjoyed and immediately patted its chest. "Don't worry, I'll handle it." The macaw headed straight for Shenmue City, while Link returned to the Wind Howl Castle. In his previous life, the players had spent almost a year preparing for war and gathered the power of the entire Freedom Federation to eradicate the machinery faith. It was a large-scale and powerful event, and it could be considered the largest event in the early stages of Wasteland Planet 1.0. Now, with Link's participation, the tough machinery faith on Wasteland Planet had been destroyed in just 4 months of the open beta testing, pressing the triple speed button for the game progress. The missions that were previously shared by the Freedom Federation players had also become exclusive to some players in Shandu. Fortunately, with Link's intervention, this mission did not widen the gap between the players and cause them to become polarized. The experience failure this time was jokingly called the Hakata incident by the players. The 10 million EXP had not been redistributed, so there was no EXP bull. According to the famous game analyst Zhuge Wanjun's theory of game relativity, if the gap between them was not widened, then it would be narrowed down. Thus, although it seemed like they had offended all the players, in reality, the normal players should be thanking Link. After Link returned to the castle, he opened the forum and watched the players' every move like a father who missed his child on a long journey. After attacking the machinery faith, the players did not get any bonuses, and it was more like they had experienced a long animation. The battle between Link and the mechanical pioneers took place above the floating mech city. The players only heard the explosion but did not see anything. After the entire battle, the players gave the machinery faith war a very appropriate name: Monster Security Company Pet Promotion. The most impressive thing on the battlefield was not the defensive force field or the energy cannon. Instead, it was the various pets that attacked and destroyed the mechanical army in various ways. In addition, with the establishment of the Monster Security Company, players had the opportunity to buy all kinds of pets from the company, so it was quite appropriate to call it a promotion. On the internet, some players had even created a video of the game and turned it into a TV shopping program. The battlefield was the effect of the show, which brought a lot of joy to the netizens. Now, the majority of the players had an average level of 20. After the major event ended, he would focus on the selection and activation of his secondary profession. The combination of main and secondary professions was an important system in Destiny. The combination of different main and subclasses could create many different ways of playing, and a compatible combination of main and subclasses could even activate some rare classes. There were a lot of posts on the forum, talking about class combinations, skill combinations, and the conditions to activate hidden classes. Even though it was their first time playing Destiny, some of the players' comments sounded like they had been old players for years. While the normal players were choosing their secondary class, the First Army had already returned to the Death Quagmire and started to farm the Death Quagmire dungeon. As a suggested level 20-30 10-person dungeon, regardless of the level, size, or the splitting process, it was extremely friendly to players. In addition, the dungeon drops were also good. After familiarizing themselves with the process, it became a sacred ground for the big guilds to farm dungeons. The materials, equipment, and EXP dropped from the boss were extremely abundant. After completing the instance dungeon, they would participate in the construction of the Northern Wilderness, Shebei District, and explore the surrounding area after a little rest. However, in the past few days, when these guild players were doing their missions in Shebei District, they had met quite a number of acquaintances. Many big shots of the gangs in the slums of Shandu took their men from the transit railway in Shebei District and left for Dragon City and Far Night. At first, the players thought it was just an exception, but in the next few days, they saw the gangs in the slums leaving Shandu through the railway, which attracted the players' attention. The Myth Guild. Guild leader lost Emma when discussed with everyone. Why are the forces in the slums moving out in large groups these 2 days? 2 days ago, it was Dasaki, and yesterday it was the Freemasonry. Whose turn is it today? Today's NPC rarely shows his face, I don't know him. The reticent Liver King, the Cha Sha True Prophet, raised his hand and said, I've crossed paths with them before when I was doing a quest. The people who didn't show their faces on the train today are from the Hidden Alliance. These people rarely come out during the day, and their skin is sickly white. I suspect they are bloodlings. Why didn't you tell us about the bloodlings earlier? Everyone was surprised. Cha Sha shrugged his shoulders helplessly, and the first thing he said was Old Versailles. There's no point in telling you earlier. Your reputation in the Hidden Alliance hasn't reached respect, so of course you won't be able to see the core. Everyone was speechless, and then they gasped in surprise. You've raised your reputation with the Hidden Alliance to reverence. F***ck, he's ruthless. As expected of the Liver King. Back then, I gave up because the Hidden Alliance's quest only gave half of the reputation points to another organization. This organization's reputation points are too difficult to gain. I didn't expect you to reach reverence without a word, Prophet. If I'm not wrong, blood race should be an optional profession. Why didn't you choose blood race as your sub-profession, but an ordinary mechanic engineer? Bloodkin can be considered a rare profession, so the effect must be great. The Prophet adjusted his glasses and said in a calm tone, if I choose the Blood Clan, I can only act at night. This doesn't suit my style. The mechanic engineer brought me this tactical eyepiece that's connected to the satellite. It comes with a positioning system and an intelligent program inside. It can scientifically plan mission routes and processes. The other players of the Myth Guild, including the guild leader Lost Mon, had their eyes lit up like a weasel that had seen a chicken. They were drooling. How did you get such awesome equipment? The Prophet's tone was much lighter this time. Oh, that's easy. As long as he first did 200 purchasing and shipping missions in the Military Intelligence Department in Chenmu City, and if he was still a mechanic engineer, he would receive a mission to deliver things to the Underground Research Center. Next, you'll have a chance to meet Helen, the head of the Underground Research Center. If she happens to be building mechanical products and you're a mechanic, you might get a small gift from her. If not, please repeat the above process. The Myth's members were dumbfounded when they heard this. The procurement and delivery mission was the most boring mission. Every mission took at least an hour from receiving the list, purchasing, and submitting the mission. If the purchase list was complicated, 1 hour might not be enough. It would take more than 2 hours. However, this kind of mission was the simplest F-level errand mission. Players with slightly higher levels would not even bother to do it. The Prophet's level was the highest in the myth, and he was also the first army among all the players on Wasteland Planet. To be able to do hundreds of purchasing and shipping missions at once with such a status and level, his perseverance and determination were beyond imagination. Moreover, the fact that the Prophet could conclude that the above process was repeated meant that the Prophet had done it more than 200 times. It could have been 400 or 600 times. At the thought of this, everyone could not help but shiver. Words could no longer describe how terrifying this kind of Liver King was. I don't want it. I can't do this mission even if you tell me. I'm afraid I'll have a mental breakdown if I fail once, hehe. It's too terrifying. How deep is this mission? They actually dug it out. Everyone looked at the Prophet as if they were looking at a monster. The Prophet was usually engrossed in doing quests. Other than activities such as guild dungeons, he was usually elusive. Lost Mon pulled the topic back. The core members of the Secret Alliance have also left Shandu today. The forces in the slums have left one after another these days. Is there going to be a big change in Shandu? A conspiracy theory was brewing in everyone's minds. Everyone thought of how the forces in the slums had been suppressed and ignored, so they tried to escape quietly. The Prophet scratched his head and looked at the crowd with a dumbfounded expression. Escape? When they left, they brought a lot of pets, wild wolves, and staff from the Commerce Department of Dragon City and French Knight. Based on what I learned from the Military and Municipal Commerce Department some time ago, they probably went to Dragon City and French Knight to open branch offices under the banner of the Monster Security Company. Everyone from the myth had question marks on their faces. How did this guy know so much? Lost, Mon heaved a long sigh of relief. At this moment, he kept feeling like they were monkeys. They were a bunch of monkeys chattering away. If someone who knew everything sat by and watched them perform, it would make them look stupid. Prophet, what else do you know? We won't show off our skills in front of an expert. Lost Mon said with a bitter smile. The Prophet sat forward and thought for a moment. Then I'll continue the extension I just did. When I was on a mission in the military and the Department of Commerce, I found out that Longcheng and Fia were asking to buy a wolf. This matter had been suppressed for more than 2 months, and it was finally approved before the final battle with the machinery faith some time ago. The Wolf Riders led by Commander Benjamin had performed outstandingly in this battle, and Dragon City and Fei had repeatedly sent urgent letters, hoping to bring them in as soon as possible. After that, the Minister of Economy, Penny, made an additional request, hoping that Shandu would continue to be responsible for the after-sales work of the wild wolves. Dragon City and Fei, who were in urgent need of wild wolves, agreed without a second thought. Combining these backgrounds and the latest structure of Lin's financial group, all the forces in the slums are under the name of Monster Security Company, and I have come to a conclusion. The Myth's members were completely attracted by the profit, and their appetites were full. All of them were waiting for the profit to come to a conclusion. This is an open plot in Shadu. With the wild wolf as the strategic point, he would bring the Monster Security Company and a series of logistics industries to other parts of the Freedom Federation, take root there, and start the pet sales and rental business. I believe that soon, players from Dragon City and Far Night will be able to use the cheap and good quality illusory vines and self-destructing rats. The prophet's words made Lost Mo Wen's heart tighten. Originally, these items were considered specialty products of Shandu. The players of Shandu had even played a similar Versailles body on the forum and showed off their superiority, causing players from Dragon City, Magic Knight, and other small forces to gnash their teeth. After all, such a large-scale and multi-purpose pet could only be owned by the Monster Security Company in Shandu. As long as one's reputation met the requirements, they could spend money to buy a pet. These multi-purpose pets greatly reduced the difficulty of the players' missions, fighting monsters and dungeons, increasing their efficiency. However, according to the prophet's current guess, these exclusive conveniences would soon be enjoyed by the players of Dragon City and Magic Knight. Didn't that mean that the advantage of the players in Shandu was gone? A strong sense of urgency welled up in his heart. Just as the members of the Myth were slowly revealing the whole picture of Link's open scheme in Shebei district. On the train headed for Dragon City, dark-colored curtains covered all the windows, and only the soft and gentle candlelight flickered in the luxurious carriage. Many of the core vampires of the Hidden Alliance were in the car. The leader of the group was the newly promoted Count, Simon. The second in command was one of the core members of the think tank in Chitu, Link's most trusted right-hand man, and the third master who used to fan him. On this trip to Dragon City, the Monster Security Company has been successfully launched, and the Blood Clan's feast is also the most important. In addition, Master has also arranged for Dragon City's local personnel to pick us up. When the time comes, we need to cooperate sincerely and put on a good show. Chapter 483 The Infection Plan begins. After a long 10-hour journey, the train from Shandu to Dragon City gradually came to a stop with a screeching sound of deceleration. The core members of the Hidden Alliance in the carriage were all dressed up and waiting for the Earl to speak. Simon walked out in an elegant black suit. His collar was straight, and his sleeves were without wrinkles. There was no flaw in the exquisite details. Simon's face did not have the sickly white characteristic of the Blood Clan. Instead, it had a gentle white color with a trace of blood. After Simon came out, he waited for a while, and the third brother, Mr. Kong, also came out of the private room. Although Simon was the new Earl and leader of the Secret Alliance in name, he was still the leader of the Secret Alliance. However, everyone present knew that the third son, Mr. Kong, had a higher status in the Lin's financial group. Not only was he a member of the Hidden Alliance, but he was also the first white paper fan to follow General Lin and give him advice. He was also one of the think tanks of the Lin Consortium's core institution. In terms of qualifications, personal strength, and status, he far surpassed Simon. However, in the name of this trip, Simon was the main person, and his third brother, Mr. Kong, was the assistant. He was the housekeeper of the Blood Clan in the Secret Alliance and the secretary of the Dragon City branch of the Monster Security Company. After Simon greeted Mr. Kong, he walked to the center and glanced at the crowd. Everyone here is a core member of the Hidden Alliance, and we all know that we're here on a mission to Dragon City. However, before I get off the bus, I would like to emphasize that this mission in Dragon City concerns the entire Freedom Federation and even the strategy of the entire wasteland planet. You must not take it lightly. I repeat solemnly, this time, our mission is not only to ensure that the Monster Security Company's branch office takes root in Dragon City smoothly, but also to win the right to speak at the Vampire Banquet. Although Dragon City was hungry for wild wolves, it did not mean that it would accept Monster Security Company. At the same time, our strong intervention will definitely cause repeated obstruction from the old forces of Dragon City. Our biggest reliance is the golden signboard of Monster Security Company and the official representative of Shita behind us. Simon's eyes swept across the crowd and said with determination, there are still quite a few people in the core of the Secret Alliance. I chose you this time because your eyes are filled with unwillingness. Back when he was under Dracula's command, he did not have a stage to show off because of his bloodline's grade. I know you're all holding back and want to prove yourselves. From now on, the entire Dragon City will be your stage. Simon said as he spread his hands. Simon's words were quite instigative, and he was the one who had carefully selected the candidates this time with a thick stack of information. They were basically core members who were not important or had low noble titles during Dracula's rule. Ever since Simon had taken over the Hidden Alliance, he had followed in Link's footsteps. He advocated for wisdoms and promoted talents. Many marginalized members were put in important positions. This time, Simon had personally gone to Lin Kei's house to get the job for the Monster Security Company in Dragon City. The price he paid was an adult werewolf. Mr. Kong, do you have anything else to add? Simon asked. The third brother smiled faintly and said half-jokingly, I've always been a pessimist. I hope that during this trip to Dragon City, I won't say the word I'm finished. The serious atmosphere in the carriage was suddenly dissolved, and everyone laughed endlessly, filling the air with a cheerful atmosphere. The third brother's expression did not change. He did not feel any pressure from leaving his homeland. Link had given them a lot of support in this expansion mission. He had a lot of cards to play. From the paper fan of the Jack gang in the slums, third brother had grown up with Link. His vision had been greatly improved. In the think tank, he brainstormed with the wise men of Shandu and exchanged ideas with each other. The third brother regarded this trip to Dragon City as a report on his half a year of experience. The train slowly stopped, and the whistle of the head of the train was loud and clear. The Blood Clan members of the Secret Alliance lifted a corner of the curtain and immediately saw the sealed station with no unauthorized people, as well as the staff of the Dragon City Business Bureau and the military who were waiting in neat rows. The customs and history of Shandu, Dragon City, and Fei were different, so there were also great differences in the style of clothing. Robes, cloaks, and face masks were common in the Sand City, obviously in the style of the desert. On the other hand, Fa Ye was known for his grace, luxury, and elegance. The details of his clothing were extremely exquisite. Dragon City's citizens valued martial arts, so they often wore warrior clothes. However, the military personnel of Dragon City wore a layer of armor over their warrior clothes, looking mighty and solemn, with an extraordinary aura. The silver armor on his body exuded a threatening chill under the sunlight. The soldier held a long spear in his hand and had a scimitar on his waist. His expression was solemn, and his body was straight as a pine. He was disciplined like a statue. No one swayed casually, and the entire station seemed to have pressed the pause button. Simon lifted a corner of the curtain, and with a solemn expression, he sighed. They're preparing to show off their power this time. The third brother was calm and unmoved. Dragon City had sent their elites to welcome them. He had already expected this move. Guess, the third brother said. Are these elites the Yulin Royal Guards, the Dragon Protection Squad, or the Valiant Cavalry Battalion? Simon carefully looked at the image of the soldiers outside. After struggling for a long time, he finally let out a breath of turbid air. These three troops are the most famous troops in Dragon City. If I were on the battlefield, I would definitely be able to tell at a glance. The Yulin Royal Guards were good at archery, the Dragon Protection Squad were brave warriors who could take on 10 people alone, and the Dauntless Cavalry Battalion were all agile and had unrivaled riding skills. But now that you've changed into the welcoming armor, I can't tell from the appearance. Mr. Kong smiled and said firmly, these people are all from the Valiant Cavalry Battalion. People who were skilled in archery and riding horses had particularly thick thighs and a stable lower body. Moreover, they had been on horseback for a long time, so their legs would expand. Looking at their faces, the Yulin Royal Guards and the Dragon Protection Squad trained in Dragon City every day. Only the Valiant Cavalry Battalion would often cross the Great Wall at the border and train in the bitter cold north. In order to prevent frostbite, he rubbed his face with coarse salt every day to form a thick layer of keratin to resist the wind and frost. Although they all look like they've been through a lot, they're different from the other two troops. After hearing this, Simon was already dumbfounded. He was in awe. When the train stopped, the third brother, Mr. Kong, stood up decisively. Let's go and meet the elites of Dragon City. Third brother put on his cloak and hood, and the rest of the core members of the Secret Alliance also put on their hoods in unison. They walked out of the carriage under Simon's lead. Shandu, Weeping Valley. Link was going through some documents in Windhowl Castle. Today was the 5th day since the Secret Alliance led by Simon arrived in Dragon City, and the 3rd day since the Freemasonry led by Old Turtle arrived in Fairy. The Hidden Alliance was responsible for the work of the Dragon City branch for the sake of the vampires. Sending the Freemasonry to Fey was also in line with the high-end religious requirements of the nobles of Fey. The Freemasonry's style of wearing robes and holding an ancient scripture to chant mass was very much in line with the pretentious requirements of the people of Fey. The Dasaka led by Alan was sent by Link to the scattered lands outside the Freedom Federation. After the nuclear explosion on the Day of Reckoning, the heritage of civilization had been lost, and life had returned to the nomadic and farming stages. With his shamanism and god summoning, Dasaka could get along with the refugees to the greatest extent. Link sat at his desk and read the report. The transmission distance of the sound transmission bug was limited. Shandu, Dragon City, and Faya were thousands of miles apart, which was far beyond the maximum transmission distance of the sound transmission bug. The normal telephone signal network was also very easy to be monitored by the spy agencies of Dragon City and Faya, so they could only carry out normal business reports and exchanges. When it came to the situation of the mission, he had to use other methods. And the solution to Sato was to use the only satellite on Wasteland to upload the information to the satellite through encrypted means, and then Troy would send the news back to Sato. The process sounded simple, but there was only one satellite in the sky of Wasteland planet. It could not cover the entire planet and could only report information every 2 days. What Lin Ke was seeing now was the first-hand information from the Monster Security Company branch that had gone out to expand. As Dragon City was the first to arrive, this was the second time they had sent back news. The first news that came back was basically what he had seen and heard about the current situation in Dragon City. The first reports from Fey and the scattered lands were similar. However, the second piece of news from Dragon City began to reveal some clues. Preliminary exploration of Dragon City briefing. To the Great Desert Emperor, the Supreme Commander of Sand City, the embodiment of the people's will. I'm honored to report to you that after the initial exploration and study of Dragon City, our observation work has finally improved. Please receive this brief report first. The follow-up report will be submitted after the in-depth exploration and excavation. Just as I expected, the challenge came right after we arrived at Dragon City. Dragon City did not seem to be a piece of iron. There were many forces with different purposes inside, which affected the fragile and balanced conditions of the entire Dragon City. However, every force had its own weakness, which made them easy to manipulate. The special agent you arranged in Dragon City has successfully contacted us and has successfully infiltrated one of the forces. After all, we've come to Dragon City for this mission. As you always say, as long as you understand the enemy's desire, you can make use of it. The preface is long enough. Please allow me to make a preliminary conclusion of my observations and explorations over the past few days. In many ways, the old faction in Dragon City was the easiest to manipulate. Their only goal was to preserve the power of the family and to obtain as much power and benefits as possible. However, based on the current situation, Su Tianzhao was happy to support the new party and suppress the old party, weakening the power and influence in their hands. This caused the conservative faction to fall into a slow death. They gathered together to keep each other warm. Although they still seemed powerful, they were already like headless flies, eager to grasp any methods that could increase their influence and power. And our pets just happened to be able to provide this. I believe that we can make use of their remaining influence and power to use them as cannon fodder against other forces. Similar to the old faction, the new faction's struggle for power is far more serious than we thought. Even if Su Tianzhao could balance the new faction to a certain extent, the balance would be broken with the appearance of the wild wolf. And this is the perfect opportunity for us to make use of. The palace guards are a force independent of the new and old factions. At present, I think it is the most challenging force in Dragon City. The palace guards were only loyal to Su Tianzhao, and their commander was the head guard of the Cold Pass, who was called Perfect Man by Dragon City. He was also Su Tianzhao's master and had a respected status in Dragon City. Their goal is very single. They are fanatical loyal to Su Tianzhao and believe in their only goal. This is their obvious weakness, and we can take advantage of it. As long as they were proven to be loyal, they would be trusted and put in an important position. However, the special agent you arranged to return to Dragon City has successfully gained the trust of this force, and I believe that there will be something to do in the future. The Dragon City military's situation is the simplest. They are divided into two factions, one for avoiding war and the other for war. No matter which faction it is, they are all eager to get our pets. They are the easiest to manipulate and erode. I believe you will soon see the results in my report. Just as we've discussed, our performance at the Blood Clan's banquet has been extremely smooth. Although it wasn't pleasant to perform the ritual with the low-level vampires, it was a must for the plan. Now, we've already displayed enough power to successfully overshadow the dignity Dracula created for the blood breeds in Shandu. We've taken the initiative and have more say in the blood breeds wild feast. The plan you've set will produce results in the next few months. I firmly believe in it. As always, we will serve as your vanguard to infect the Freedom Federation. We will erode every faction that foolishly shows hypocritical kindness to us or tries to draw power from us. And I will always be your loyal subordinate. Link's eyes brightened after he finished reading the brief report about Dragon City sent by his third brother, Mr. Kong. In just 5 days, the Hidden Alliance had brought so much important information. The one who surprised Link the most was Li Chao. He was the main character of the excellent event Forsake the Dark for the Light. After being sent back to Shandu for brutal means of injuring the boss of the intelligence department. He did not know what kind of fortuitous encounter this guy had, but he was actually recognized by the Cold Pass and became a member of the Palace Guards. Originally, Link's plan was to make use of Monster Security Company's unique position in Dragon City to let Li Chao, who had been on the sidelines, return to a key position in Dragon City's intelligence department. With the cooperation of both sides, Li Chao could gain more merits. However, he did not expect that this guy would actually join the Palace Guards in such a short time. This identity and status were far stronger than the intelligence department. As long as Li Chao got some important achievements, he would soon be noticed by Su Tianzhao. At that time, his status would only be high, not low. The most important thing was that he could get first-hand core information of Dragon City. However, after reading the report, Link seemed to have thought of something and his brows furrowed. Now, the infection of Dragon City had exceeded expectations. The higher the position, the more unexpected and unknown things there were. Now, it would take 2 days for the satellite to report the information, and 2 days for the order to be sent from Shandu. The round trip took 4 days. 4 days was equivalent to waiting for death in a situation where the situation was constantly changing. It's urgent to think of a simpler and faster way of communication that can't be intercepted over long distances. Chapter 484 A True Esper. Link focused on his thoughts, looking for inspiration from the materials he had. The mutant snail and the purple quality signal transmitter were combined to form a sound transmission bug. Among the remaining materials, there was nothing with similar effects. Link's first idea was to set up an information transfer station between the Sand Capital and Dragon City. He would let the sound bugs send messages one by one to maximize the speed of information transmission. However, there were 2 problems with this method. The multi-level transmission could not guarantee instant communication, and there was still a delay of more than 10 minutes to an hour. The sound bug's communication range was 100 kilometers, and the straight line distance between Shandu, Dragon City, and Fei was 1,000 miles. If he wanted to transmit it to multiple levels, he would have to set up more than a dozen transit points. The coordination of these transit points was a problem. Furthermore, with such confidential information, once any of the transit points were intercepted or discovered, the entire plan was at risk of being exposed. More than 10 transit points meant more than 10 times the probability of being exposed. Hence, Link rejected the idea of a transit station. It's best if it can be used for instant communication without being discovered. Only then can we ensure the smooth flow of important intelligence and instructions. Link thought for a while and decided to have a talk with Helen. The sound transmission bug was already an epic pet, so there should be no room for fusion again. He needed to find Helen to see if there were any auxiliary devices that could improve communication efficiency. Now that the machinery faith had been eliminated, the Wasteland Gang was in a corner and did not dare to invade. The security in Shandu had improved, and it could be said that the people were rich and happy. The area of activity of the people of Shandu had also expanded. There was an endless stream of caravans in the desert, and the temporary camp was overcrowded day and night. Link walked out of the castle. He could see many caravans in the distance. They poured into the city like a long dragon. There were also some who rested in the city and continued on their way to the desert. The current Divinewood city, other than its original size, had gradually formed a colony outside the city. These people were residents of the small towns and villages near Shandu. There were also many survivors rescued from Mech City who had chosen to settle down in Shenmue City to make a living. Thus, a gathering area was gradually formed. The houses in these colonies were also thanks to the Moon Shadow Council. As it was close to Divinewood City, to prevent ordinary wood from catching fire easily, Divinewood City had set up a natural array here. The wood regained its vitality, and the houses formed could gradually grow. The Moon Shadow Council operated Godwood City as if it were their main city. Now that the Sand City was full of vitality, Link was particularly pleased. Link rushed to the Underground Research Center. As soon as he entered, he saw many players who had accepted the collection and delivery missions. They were all craning their necks and waiting for Helen to appear. There were more than 10 of them. "Let us in. We've delivered more than 100 times, so we know the rules. We promise we won't wander around. We'll come out as soon as we deliver the things." "Brother Guard, I've delivered the goods more than 300 times and you still don't remember me, Ying Luo." The players kept calling him brother to please the guards of the Underground Research Center, hoping to personally deliver the goods. Just as the players and NPCs were busy fighting, Link appeared. The guard who was hesitating just now immediately woke up, and his face suddenly changed. "Go, go, go, unload the goods and leave this place, outsiders are not allowed to stay here for too long." The guards chased the players away. Link saw that many of the players' faces were pale, and some were muttering, "It's over, it's over. These 200 delivery tasks were all for nothing again. I've lost a lot of money. Fortunately, I was just probing. I haven't done it 200 times. I haven't seen all the guards who have changed shifts. There's still a chance to escape. Link walked straight into the underground research center. The guard immediately straightened his back and said, "Good day, General." Link nodded slightly. Ignoring the players, he walked into the ring of the research center and headed straight to Helen's research room. By the time Link left, the guard's forehead was already covered in sweat. He quickly chased the players away. "You outlanders have really hurt me. Hurry up and leave, or I won't even let you through the door in the future." The players left the goods where they were and dispersed like a swarm of bees. There was a sour smell in the air, as well as exclamations such as "It's just a hidden mission for the mechanic class. It's not easy for me." Link entered the laboratory. Helen was currently on the experiment table, her vision constantly switching between the data on the screen and the machine on the experiment table. Her object of study was the mechanical arm that had been dismantled from Silver Hand. Hearing the door being pushed open, Helen took a casual glance and immediately took off her goggles and fine instruments. She jumped up from her seat and said, "General, why have you come?" Her ponytail swung behind her head, making her look cute and happy. Link immediately brought out the important matter. "I came to find you because I need your help. Although Wasteland Planet has its first satellite, due to the problem of coverage frequency, Dragon City and Phase news will only be sent back once every 2 days. Our news will also take 2 days to send back, which means there will be a 4-day gap, which is extremely disadvantageous to our work. I'm here to ask if you have any good ideas to solve this." Helen quickly got into work mode. She immediately stopped smiling and began to brainstorm for countermeasures. "I've thought about the method of using the sound bugs to create nodes, but I'll need to set up more than 10 stations. The more sites there are, the more people would be invested, and the higher the risk of exposure, so I rejected this plan." Hearing Link's thoughts, Helen couldn't help but nod. The difficulty of this solution was not only in the technical aspect, but also to ensure the feasibility and secrecy of the operation. The information exchanged through the sound transmission bug was all critical information. Even the slightest bit of risk would result in unbearable consequences. Link's infection plan was especially bold. It was clear that he wanted to use the power of the Sand City to influence the progress of the entire Freedom Federation. If word of this got out, Sandal would become the main enemy of Dragon City and Fae. Helen thought for a while, and her brows furrowed deeper and deeper. Sometimes, she thought of an idea, but before she could speak, she immediately found a flaw and rejected it herself. After a long while, Helen pouted, and her eyes were filled with tears. She was so angry at her own incompetence that she choked. "General, this matter is a little out of my capabilities. I have to ask Grandpa and the doctor to discuss it and see if they can come up with a plan." Helen was swift and decisive. She wiped away the tears in her eyes and immediately communicated with Dave and Ludwig with a sound bug. After hearing Helen's request, the three of them began a heated discussion. Although Link was not a mechanic in the game, his vision and foresight still allowed him to give many effective suggestions. In the end, all conventional electrical signal transmission methods were completely rejected due to risks. The result of the four's discussion was to start from the ability. The sound bugs could transmit information over long distances through a spiritual connection. If such mental signals could be amplified, long-distance transmission could be achieved. As an outsider, Link couldn't participate in the experimental exploration. The only thing he could do was to give the green light all the way. No matter what they needed for their experiments, they would do their best to provide it at the first moment. Soon, under the leadership of the three, the researchers in Shandil worked together. In 2 days, they mastered the expansion of spiritual energy and built the first prototype in 3 days. At the ceremony, Helen spoke as the representative of the researchers, and she especially thanked the mechanical pioneer, Dr. Zhao. If it weren't for the experiments and expansion principles of mechanical and spiritual energy in the data center, we would have to go around in circles in the theoretical stage. Although the mechanical pioneer is dead, the knowledge he left behind will continue to benefit Shandu and Shine. Link applauded after hearing this. Fortunately, the mechanical pioneer had died in advance. Otherwise, if he had been alive to hear these words, he would have died of anger. The mechanical pioneers were experts in both mechanical and mental abilities. Therefore, during the preparation and experimental stage, the three of them buried themselves in the data center to find relevant information and finally found some clues. Because the mechanical pioneers had activated their mental esper abilities, they had conducted some research and made some conjectures, which had produced some results. These results played a vital role in the amplification of spiritual energy, and it was also because of these that the process was simplified and accelerated. In 5 days, from theory to prototype, the speed was amazing. After Helen's speech, she invited Link to the lowest level of the underground research center. This was the location of the prototype, and Helen explained as she walked, the principle of the prototype is the amplification of brainwaves. Through head-mounted equipment and the amplification of the fully metal spherical cabin, the effect of mental brainwaves can be increased by more than 10 times. With the sound transmission bug's 100 km communication range, it can completely meet your requirements after a 10-fold increase. Link nodded. Helen's conclusion was simple, but he knew that it would be difficult. In 5 days, from nothing to something, they overcame difficult problems. Only they had experienced how difficult it was. When he arrived at the brainwave emission chamber, the encrypted door opened, and the entire brainwave amplifier appeared in front of Link. It was surrounded by a soft, curved metal wall made of metal. Even the connecting gaps were extremely fitting, showing the superb craftsmanship. This special alloy was inspired by the experimental data from the data center. The reaction between this alloy and spiritual energy could greatly enhance the amplitude, thus expanding the range of brainwave perception. A corridor about 10 meters in the air led to the center of the launch site, and at the end of it was a helmet connected to a wire. Helen was holding a semicircular glass cover, inside which were more than a dozen sound transmission bugs. The spiritual energy of one sound transmission bug was too low. Only the spiritual energy of more than 10 sound transmission bugs combined could reach the standard operating standard. The glass cover with the sound bugs was placed on the instrument. Then Helen put the helmet on the glass cover and communicated with the sound bugs in advance. In a while, all of you will work together and find a way to connect with your kind in the distance. The sound transmission bug nodded its head and immediately put on its helmet. It was dark inside the glass cover. Helen returned to the control panel and began to fiddle with the instrument. The brainwave amplifier began to work. The door behind him closed, and the energy was in place. As Helen pressed the start button, the helmet with the connector began to work. The light dimmed, and unstable spiritual energy fluctuations began to appear on the metal wall. Soon, Link saw the wall turn into a curtain, and some glowing spots like those of pets in Swarm Commander mode began to appear. Helen was overjoyed. Looking at the stars in the brainwave amplifier, she couldn't help but exclaim, "It's a success." These light spots are existences with spiritual energy that is different from ordinary people. Next, I just need to increase the amplification and find other sound transmission bugs. Helen continued to work, gradually increasing the amplification effect. But at the same time, the surrounding scene began to flash, followed by the sound of an alarm. Before Helen could deal with it, the light around her quickly dimmed, and the light in the firing chamber was turned on again. Smoke rose from the gap of the central helmet. Helen quickly stepped forward and took off her helmet. The white mist in the glass cover was so thick that the sound transmission bug could no longer be seen. He opened the glass cover and a wave of heat hit him in the face. By the time the white mist dissipated, the dozen or so sound transmission bugs were already extremely shriveled, like dried radishes after dehydration. The sound transmitting bug, which was originally the size of a finger, had now shrunk to the size of a knuckle. Helen's face was full of disappointment as she stared at the dying voice transmission bug. Link walked up to check on the bug's condition. "Yup, it was obvious that he had been squeezed dry. One of the sound bugs used all its strength to shout, "Quickly, help this one to rest, Zhen Zhen." Ha, he was really a small and arrogant person. Dave and Ludwig also went up to check and found the problem. The mental strength of the sound transmission bug still can't withstand the tenfold brainwave expansion. It seems that if we want to send the message out, we'll have to find a stronger mental esper. Dave said. An esper with a strong spirit was rare even in the Sand City. The number of people who could do such confidential work was even fewer. Link searched his mind but could only find Grace. It's fine. You've already done very well. It's not your problem that they can't withstand the mental pressure. You take care of the maintenance of the equipment and leave the spiritual powerhouses to me. With Link's comfort, Helen's self-blame and guilt eased. After leaving the underground research center, Link prepared to head to the misty villa beneath the Weeping Valley to invite Grace to participate in the confidential project. However, he had only taken 2 steps when a huge explosion suddenly came from within the city. The flames soared into the sky, and the impact of the explosion spread out at a visible rate. A ferocious and oppressive mushroom cloud rose up with a loud bang. Link stopped. He did not get into the car. Instead, he rushed to the Godwood City. The residents of Divinewood City were also frightened by the sudden explosion as people all over the streets of the city swarmed out. The Moon Shadow Council druids in the Druid district were also dispatched to deal with the aftermath of the explosion. Link moved as fast as lightning and quickly arrived at the center of the explosion, the villa. In the garden of a mansion, Link saw 2 disheveled people trying to put out the fire and clear the thick smoke. One of them was Silverhand. The other macaw flapped its wings and tried its best to beat the smoke. At this moment, its eyes were filled with determination as it stared at the flames in the garden. Link felt the macaw release a strong wave of psychic power. It was like a pair of invisible hands that held down the burning flames. Link was stunned. Immediately, anger welled up in his heart as he pointed at the macaw and shouted, "Jin, you said you don't have any other abilities." Chapter 485 A New Bond. The macaw trembled and immediately withdrew its strong mental energy. Immediately, the flames that had just been restrained surged again and exploded with a bang. Not far away, Silverhand, who was wearing sunglasses, was putting out the fire with a fire extinguisher as he exclaimed, "What a brilliant light and heat, like the interweaving of the misty flames and dark smoke at the beginning of life, like the justice and evil of the world." Before he could finish, the fire expanded again. Silverhand was forced back by the strong fire and muttered, "Old Jin, quickly use your spirit energy to suppress it." Silverhand flashed over. When he saw Link, he was stunned. "Oh, so it's Link. You guys talk first, I'll go back to my work, Ying Ying." "Stop there." Link's tone was cold. The Silverhand froze, and the macaw shrunk its neck. They knew they were in big trouble. "Put out the fire first." The macaw was like a puppet as it reactivated its telekinesis and trapped the flames into a small ball. Then, Link entered the Son of Heaven's insight mode and drew out the oxygen in the air. The flames grew smaller and smaller until they died down. The energy of the silver mechanical arm burst out, doubling the strength attribute, and he punched out. The strong wind from the punch was destructive, and the flame exploded into countless sparks and ashes, floating above the villa. At this time, the military intelligence department and the druid team rushed over. They saw that the fire had been put out and even saw Link's figure. Link waved his hand and beckoned them in. "The garden still needs to be watered to extinguish the embers. As for the 2 of you, follow me." Link's expression was serious as he called the Silverhand and the macaw over to the villa. Link sat on the sofa and stared at the Silverhand and macaw. "Tell me, when did you 2 get together? When did these 2, who had nothing to do with each other, start working together under Link's nose? Now, they were even causing an explosion in the city. Oh my, this is too bold." Silverhand's head turned to the side, his posture showing that he was not cooperating. Link fixed his gaze on the macaw. Since he doesn't want to say it, then you can say it. The macaw pretended to be cute and tried its best to widen its eyes. Ever since you arranged for me to find a villa for Silverhand, Ying Ying. Link's eyes widened in disbelief. You guys were together since then. The macaw quickly flapped its wings. No, didn't I take a video outside the operating room at that time? I just wanted to extort this guy, but I didn't expect that after talking, I would find out that the two of them were attracted to each other, and they both had the heart to always advance forward. Good fellow, he even used the attraction between the parrot and the male. Then what about your telekinesis ability? Link asked while the iron was hot. The macaw scratched its head. I didn't know at first. I thought I only activated one lightning speed ability. But some time ago, I was so busy working as an agent at the monster security company that I suddenly found out that I had the ability to control the movement of objects. That's when I found out that I activated telekinesis. The macaw was on the verge of tears. I'm just an ordinary parrot. Even if I activate my telekinesis, I'm not one of the many pets. Furthermore, my telekinesis can't compare to Grace's. It's not even worth a mention. Just as Link was about to ask something, a murderous-looking man pushed the door open and entered. John went straight into the villa and scolded, "Don't you know that this is a densely populated area? What if the explosion hurt people? I allowed you to live here alone, but not for you to cause an explosion." After hearing the news, John was so angry that his lungs almost exploded. He put down the plate in his hand and quickly rushed to the Divine Wood City. Silverhand knew that he was in the wrong, so he tilted his eyes 45 degrees and simply ignored John's lecture. John rambled on and on, his hands shaking in anger. Link quickly patted his shoulder and comforted him, "You can't just keep blaming him. This way, he will be rebellious and go against you. You have to guide him to change his mind." Before Link could finish, John said, "If you can do it, then go." Link choked for a while. He pointed at John and said in a low voice, "Their stubbornness is exactly the same, Huan Huan. I'll go then." Link wasn't afraid at all. He stared at the macaw and the silver hand. After a while, he asked, "Do you two know your mistakes?" He had openly conducted dangerous explosive experiments in a residential area without any protective measures and without any consideration of the consequences. The Sand Capital's Divine Wood City was originally very safe, but because of the two of you messing around, it's going to be covered in a dark shadow. The macaw lay flat and allowed herself to be ridiculed, without any quibbling. "I know I was wrong." Silverhand, on the other hand, had indeed inherited John's perfect personality. He was impervious to anything and didn't apologize or speak. John stuck his hands in front of his chest. Seeing Link's defeat, he was even more certain of his inner thoughts. Silverhand was rebellious now, and it was impossible to make him realize his mistakes with words, so he could only fight. Only after beating him up would he learn. Link looked at the silver hand and saw that it had no regrets. He then focused his eyes on the macaw again. "Your conspirator refused to plead guilty. What do you think we should do?" The macaw was also a bird spirit. It had not learned how to read people's expressions for more than 30 years in vain. It immediately said bitterly, "Boss, we'll do whatever you say. This is my problem." "All right, since you don't have any questions, you'll have to bear double the punishment." The first punishment was to personally repair the damaged villa, the second punishment was to do voluntary labor in the Divine Wood City. The original 50 hours were doubled to 100 hours. Punishment 3, participate in an underground research center experiment. Do you have any objections to this punishment? No objections. The macaw shook its head. At this time, Silverhand couldn't stand it anymore and said angrily, "Why should old Jin double the punishment? This isn't fair." Link shrugged nonchalantly. "It didn't need to be punished twice, but it's a coward. It doesn't dare to admit its mistake. It's worse than a bird." Silverhand's face turned red. Although he knew that Link was trying to goad him, he still couldn't take it. Who says I don't dare to admit it? I was the one who created the explosion. Jin was just cheering me on and encouraging me to chase after my dream. It had nothing to do with him. If you want to punish someone, just punish me. However, I'm only accepting my punishment because I don't want you to wrongly accuse a good person. It doesn't mean that I think I'm wrong. However, I don't expect you to understand. After all, the path of art is lonely. The light and heat contained in the explosion may be the true essence of the whole world. Silverhand's eyes were firm, like a scout. No one has ever forbidden you from doing it, Link said casually. But you can't do it in crowded areas. If you're in the desert or in the wasteland gang's territory in the south, I won't be angry. I'll even praise you. Silverhand opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but in the end, he didn't say a word. He knew that Link was right. But because of his rebellion, although he accepted it in his heart, he would not show it. Since you admit that you're the mastermind and the macaw is an accomplice, then I'll have to ask you. In that case, you'll accept the restoration of the villa and the voluntary work in Shenmue City, right? The Silver Hand was initially stubborn and ignored him, but when he met Link's eyes, he finally gave in and nodded unwillingly. Link turned back smugly and saw John's awkward expression. He was overjoyed. Let's see what strength is. Since you've admitted it, let's not delay any longer. Let's start now. Silverhand was also very stubborn. He rolled up his sleeves and walked out of the villa. He began to clean up the ruins with the druids and the staff sent by the military intelligence department. After Silverhand left, Link grinned from ear to ear. He said proudly, "How is it? I'll do as I say." John didn't say anything. She was cursing in her heart. She didn't see that Link had a child. He was actually so good at guiding rebellious teenagers. With just a few words, Silverhand obediently took the initiative to work and pay for his mistakes. Link patted John's shoulder and said, as expected, after living a stable life with Marcia, you've been lacking in improvement. John clenched his fist and swore to himself, the next time they met, he would definitely study the psychology of teenagers thoroughly so that his silver hands would not be able to move. Before Link left the villa, he turned back and glanced at the macaw. "Let's go. Why are you still standing here?" The macaw pointed at the ruins of the explosion. "Shouldn't I stay behind to clean up the ruins and do public service?" "That's for you to do after this. Come with me to the underground research center first." Link's original intention was to find psionites with strong mental power. He had planned to find Grace, but a small incident occurred. He discovered that the macaw had also activated its psychic power. Then why do we need to find Grace? Let this guy do it. As they walked out of the Divine Wood City, the macaw lowered its head and followed behind them timidly, like a primary school student who had done something wrong. "Now tell me, how far have you mastered your telekinesis?" The macaw scratched its head and said, "I don't know. After I found out that I have telekinesis, I didn't take it seriously. It's just easier to take things and I haven't tested it." "That's great. I'll take you to the test today." Link returned to the underground research center. The people there were also watching the explosion in the city. The Silverhand's masterpiece had already reached the research center, and the researchers were gathered together to discuss it. Link brought the Vajram Mallows to Helen's laboratory and said, "Helen, take the macaw and test its spiritual power." Helen was stunned for a moment. She was familiar with the macaw. Helen knew that it had a speed ability, but she didn't understand why they had to test its spiritual power. However, since it was the general's order, Helen had to strictly follow it. Helen directed the macaw to a chair and prepared a helmet full of cables. The macaw put on its helmet and moved its seat. The lift door in front of it slowly lifted up, and inside was the shooting range for testing firearms. There were many balloons in the orbit, arranged in rows, each 25 meters apart, extending to the end of the shooting range, 300 meters away. This is the latest spiritual power testing method. It's effective and accurate, and can accurately measure the spiritual power level to the greatest extent. There were a total of 13 levels. The higher the level, the stronger the spiritual power. The standard is to use your psychic energy to break the balloon. If your psychic energy can be extended to 300 meters, you'll reach level 12. If your psychic energy is stronger, you'll be collectively called a powerhouse above level 13. The macaw sat on the chair and was eager to try. What should I do? Helen pointed at a row of balloons in the shooting range. You just need to focus your mental power and think about piercing the balloon with your mental power. Oh, that's easy. Helen was stunned for a moment and said, "Don't underestimate these balloons. They're made to test spiritual power. They're made of different materials. Also, there are strict rules on the distance. For every 25 meters of mentality, the strength required will be increased by 1 energy level." This test was also based on this principle. Helen activated the detection equipment and stepped aside. The macaw took a deep breath, its rice-sized eyes focused on the balloon not far away. Buzz! Whoosh! Shua shua shua! The balloons exploded one after another. 6 of them burst in a row, and the force was unstoppable. Link's jaw dropped, and Helen's mouth was agape in disbelief. After freezing for a moment, the 7th balloon also exploded. But after that, the macaw's head leaned forward slightly, and its expression looked constipated. It was obvious that it was exerting all its strength. After a few breaths, the 8th balloon also exploded. The macaw was like a deflating balloon, its tensed body visibly deflated. Its tongue stuck out from its metal beak and drooped weakly to the side. Helen was gathering the data collected by the equipment. Link walked up to check. When the data was compiled into a chart, a rising curve suddenly appeared in front of Link. Helen's eyes lit up, and she said excitedly, "General, the results are out. The macaw's spiritual power is stable at level 7. What kind of concept is level 7? Levels 1 to 3 are low-tier mental ability users, 4 to 9 are mid-tier mental ability users, 10 to 12 are high-tier mental ability users, and levels 13 and above are immeasurable. They are the kind that can cause large-scale effects with their mental power and are known as the strongest existences on the surface." With that, Link understood the macaw's level. It was stable at level 7 and could reach level 8 with a burst of power. In other words, with the macaw's mental strength, it could detect targets from 200 meters away. On the wasteland planet, he might not be the strongest, but he was definitely not weak. Link's thoughts began to form. If, and I'm saying if, the macaw is the main role of this brainwave amplifier, can it take it? Of course, it's not a problem. Intermediate mental ability users can completely resist this increase without any side effects. The sound transmission bugs used for the test only had a total energy level of 3. Then what are we waiting for? Let's start the second experiment now. Link's lips curled up. If it was proven that the macaw could use the brainwave amplifier without side effects, then Link would have another idea. Soon, the dumbfounded macaw was brought to the brainwave amplifier. After the helmet was successfully put on, it saw an unprecedented vast world. As the macaw's mental strength increased by 10 times, everyone in the Sand City with mental strength that was different from ordinary people could feel this spying. It's done. Helen's voice trembled. It's already sensed the bugs in Dragon City. Link stared at the macaw, which was still immersed in the spread of its spiritual power. He turned to Helen and asked, "If we were to make a new brainwave amplifier, would it be expensive?" Helen nodded and then shook her head. "Although this prototype is very expensive, since it has been proven to be feasible, I can modify and upgrade some parts of it, and the price will be slightly cheaper. However, compared to the experimental funds provided by the General, it's just a drop in the ocean." With Helen's words, Link was completely at ease. He already had a new idea. He planned to use the brainwave amplifier, the macaw, and the sound transmission bug to synthesize a wave of comradeship. Monster Synthesis Master Chapter 486. The Brainwave Amplifier is a large-scale scientific equipment built by the three top scientists of Shadu, plus millions of scientific research funds, and the theory of mechanical pioneers, with purple quality. The soundworm is also of purple quality, which is absolutely magical when used for synthesis. Link entered the system and selected the macaw and the soundworm in the fetters interface. Macaw, blue. Soundworm, purple. The bond rate is 100%. The bond formation requires one purple material and one blue material. Does it generate a bond? Seeing the fetters rate, Link was very confident and confirmed that there was no problem with his conjecture. Next comes the question of materials. Purple material, lock a brainwave amplifier in advance. The blue material must have a similar effect. Fortunately, Helen made a personal version of the brainwave amplifier before practicing. The blue quality is just right to use. When all the materials were ready, Link couldn't wait to choose to generate bonds. In the next second, all the metal refraction walls and central instruments in the brainwave amplifier room disappeared, and a new bond appeared on Link's bond page with a purple background. Although Link was ready, he couldn't help taking a breath after seeing the epic fetters. The previous effects of Home Alone, the greenery and the iron sword on the copper wall were so impressive, this epic bond made Link look forward to it. Link clicked in and took a look. Mental network, purple. The macaw can connect with all the voice worms in the spiritual network regardless of distance. Connection and communication require mental power. After reading it, Link froze for a while, and was overjoyed immediately. This is really an epic fetter. A spiritual network connection that ignores distance, an absolute God-level bond. Although interference crystals used to shield spiritual prying eyes are common in the middle and late stages, in the early stage novice planet, this kind of spiritual network connection is simply a bug-level existence. This level of mental network can be cracked by strong mental abilities with an energy level of 13, and no mental abilities of other levels can snoop it. And for the 13th level mental ability powerhouse, it must be at least the legendary level. As far as Link knows, none of the three legends on the Waste Saturn is a strong psychic. Link quickly walked to the macaw and pressed the macaw's shoulder and said, "Lao Jin, now you try to contact the voice worms of Dragon City and Fei." The macaw felt a big difference, and nodded again and again, concentrating attentively to communicate. An invisible network of mental power appeared on the Waste Saturn, between the soundworm and the macaw. A chat group-like thing appeared in the macaw's brain. "Macaw, everyone, can you hear me? Voiceworm number 1, yes. Soundworm number 2, macaw bowl beer. Voiceworm number 3, I didn't expect everyone to have a chance to chat. Voiceworm number 4, I want to kill you all. Voiceworm 57, hello, Zipple." Suddenly, the mental network fell into silence, and Zeeble stayed at the bottom in embarrassment. Voiceworm 57 was particularly embarrassed. After a while, he explained, "You have said everything that can be said, I just thought of saying something casually, but I didn't expect." Immediately after this pale and feeble explanation was overwhelmed by the condemnation of other voice worms. "Yet, have you learned a foreign language only a few days after going out? Tisk tusk tusk, my is up to the sky, wait for the next time you come back to tidy up this guy. Why did I just heard that a few soundworms have shrunk into an egg because of the failure of the experiment? I'm curious about what it became." The macaws watched the crowd roaring, and gave all the soundworms a ban, so that they could not talk. "Don't make any noise, I'm going to bring in the big boss." After the macaw finished speaking, he threw an invitation to Link to the spiritual network. Because the macaw is the core of the subject in the fetters of mental network, it can be understood as the group leader of a chat group. Link turned on the mind magnetic field amplification function of Mind Crown, allowing him to use his mind like a supernatural person, and then joined the mental network thrown by the macaw. As soon as Lin Ke entered the spiritual network, he suddenly realized that it was a different place. He could clearly perceive all the sound worms in the spiritual world, those sent out, including those still in shadow. Warmly welcome the boss to come and give guidance, everyone welcome, said the macaw, and revised the mute status so that all voice worms can speak. The voice worms spoke enthusiastically one by one, and they all tried to use special language to attract Link's attention. Welcome the boss to come and guide the work. What does the boss tell me to resolutely implement? The Emperor of the Desert, I am your faithful servant. Boss, you are electricity, you are light, and you are the only myth of the wasteland. As soon as the boss came in, I felt a terrifying deterrence, and the light and temperament on my body made it impossible to look at. With all kinds of dazzling compliments and flattery, Link was embarrassed and almost passed away. In the past, the voice worm was just acting as a telephone operator. Now when I enter the spiritual network, I can see a series of poems, and they are all jokes. They really have their own personalities. The macaw looked almost the same, and immediately said, "Okay, now I listen to the boss arrange work, everyone is quiet." The group leader spoke, and the voice worms were immediately quiet. After all, they had already experienced the majesty of authority. Link assigned different tasks according to the conditions of Dragon City, Fey, and the scattered places, and gave the latest instructions. The voice worms from the 3 places responded in unison to ensure the completion of the task. Link listened to the reports of the voice worms from various places, and then satisfactorily offline and quit the group chat. After all, the amplification effect of Mind Crown is only half an hour a day, and Link's half-hour card experience expires. After quitting, Link patted the macaw on the shoulder and said, "Old Jin, the working group of this spiritual network will depend on you in the future. There are important information in the group every day, so report to me as soon as possible." The macaw received this order suddenly, and the whole bird was a little confused. Didn't I say that I came to the underground research center to be punished? How could I become the group leader of the spiritual network chat group in a blink of an eye? But the macaw immediately realized the heavy responsibility. I am responsible for coordinating the intelligence work of the voice worm connecting the entire waste Saturn. Missing any information will cause big trouble. Boss, rest assured, I promise to complete the task. The macaw is usually laughing and making troubles, but the attitude is still very correct in front of the business. What's more, Link now has half an hour every day to enter the spiritual network and personally receive reports from the voice worms from all over the waste Saturn. With the epic fetters of the spiritual network, the speed of intelligence information exchange is rapid in places separated by thousands of kilometers. Link thought for a moment and asked, "Lao Jin, are there any requirements for pulling people in?" The macaw scratched his head and said, "Boss, because of your different status, I can just pull you in. But other people can't come in so easily. First of all, according to the mental strength test of Helen, the mental strength cannot be lower than level 4, and you have to join the fetters. Only when these 2 conditions are met can you enter the spiritual network." Knowing the authority and principles of the spiritual network, Link felt more relieved. In the future, all the pets of the psychic power system can be pulled into this bond and can communicate remotely. Dare to love this spiritual network, it will become a monster chat group in the future. Helen hadn't reacted to the side. The brainwave amplifier is so spicy that it won't be there. Looking at the macaw and Link again, he looks satisfied. It settled the matter of frontline intelligence transmission and communication, but solved a big problem for Link. Moreover, this epic fetter of spirit network is also very useful after entering the starry sky. Link walked to Helen and said with a smile, "The brainwave amplifier is still a very important project. The subsequent construction and improvement will trouble Helen." Helen was flattered and hurriedly said, "This is what I belong to." The general is polite. Just after testing, I found that the prototype is still lacking, so I can take the opportunity to modify it. Link nodded with his hand in his hand, with full leadership. This brainwave amplifier is still very important to Shadow. After it is built, there must be comprehensive protection measures. The enemy must not be sneaked into and used. Helen Little Chicken nodded like a peck. She understood the terrifying effect of the brainwave amplifier. If the enemy was really used to do evil, the consequences would be disastrous. The general rest assured, I will take strict security measures and design a protection system that prevents the enemy from sneaking in. Link did not hesitate to praise and nodded in satisfaction. I have never doubted Helen's words. After Link and the macaw walked out of the underground research center, Link looked at the Veneno macaw next to him and said, well, now go to voluntary labor. If there is any news in the spiritual network, let me know as soon as possible. Just as the macaw was about to leave, Link suddenly shouted and added, next time Silverhand wants to make an explosion, you can take him to the deserted desert, or go directly to the Wasteland Gang in the south, and make a huge turn. No comment. The macaw's eyes lit up, nodded repeatedly, and extended its wings to salute. Boss, rest assured, I will guide you more in the future. Link was very relieved to see the macaw slipping away. Another major problem was solved, laying a solid foundation for the follow-up remote command of Longcheng and Fei. And the price paid is just a brainwave amplifier worth 5 million. For Link, this cost is terribly low. Because Share has the most diligent players and the most complete mission process, there are also copies of different sizes and levels around it, which can fully support the player's process from low to high. As long as these players stay in the area of Shadow, Link will create a steady stream of wealth and profits. There is another ghost-like Penguin Penny operating, and the arrangement for the players is clear, and Link's wealth has grown visible to the naked eye. Link did not return to Wuthering Castle, but according to the earliest plan, visited Misty Mountain Villa. After returning from the last war, Link hadn't seen Grace much. Although knowing that she must be immersed in research in the villa, Link decided to come and take a look. After the last Mechanical City War, Misty Villa finally unveiled its mysterious veil. The leader-level Banshee King and the puppet army under her command made a stunning appearance. Since then, more and more people have come to expedition in Misty Mountain Village to try their luck. They all look forward to their hidden attributes, which can activate special tasks and be favored by the Banshee King. As a result, all the people who came in with this idea were thrown out, and 10 points of friendliness were deducted at the same time, which made the players converge. Link came to the bottom of the Weeping Valley, and the Misty Villa was completely hidden in the grey mist. These grey mists are acquired by dichromatic algae. As the dichromatic algae multiply, the density of the grey mist becomes larger and larger, making the Weeping Valley more and more mysterious. Link wore a gas mask and entered the grey fog. The harpy, the unintentional, and other puppets that were originally hidden in the fog all automatically retreated. Together with the grey fog gradually dissipating, a clear road to the villa was cleared. The harpy appeared in front of Link, nodding slightly. Honorable Lord, the Banshee King is already waiting in the villa. The harpy's respectful attitude towards Link is not only due to the obedience of the Banshee King, but also a large part of the reason for Link's performance in the Goria Grand Canal, as well as the undead and eagle guardians under his command. Harpy is just an ordinary alchemy product, but the ability of the eagle guardian is already borrowing the power of the Horus. In the eyes of the harpy, this kind of power is astonishing. Horus is the only true of the harpy, and the guardian of the eagle can allow Horus to come, temporarily borrow his power, and have a pharaoh's scepter that symbolizes power and holds the power of life and death. All this is let the harpy worship deeply. Although these hawks are all transformed from grace using alchemy www.mtlnovel.com, the hawks themselves also have the culture and belief worship of the species. Not to mention ordinary harpy, it was Grace that was surprised when she saw the guardian of the hawk. Marveling at the profound mystery of Link's alchemy, Grace returned to the Misty Mountain after the war, and did not study alchemy behind closed doors, trying to replicate Link's miracle. Grace had just collected a book of questions, and was about to come to ask for advice after a while, but he didn't expect Link to come to Misty Villa in person. When Link came to Misty Mountain Villa, Grace was already standing at the door waiting. After seeing Link, Grace's eyes changed slightly and she couldn't wait to take out her notebook. You have been staying in the villa during the period after the war, and I, the leader, didn't always come to see it. I just solved a big problem today. Stop by and take a look. Just say anything if you need it. Grace thought thoughtfully and asked, I felt a terrifying mental power just now. It seemed to be spying on me, but it just passed by. This should be the big trouble, General Lin said. Chapter 487 Wasteland Gang's Special Ability Team. Grace was the queen of banshees and a powerful mental esper. She was proficient in the use of telekinesis. Although Grace hadn't gone through the energy level test, from Link's experience, he could tell that Grace, who could transform into a grey mist and perform large-scale telepathy and mind-absorbing, had a much stronger spiritual energy level than the macaw, who could cause trouble every day with its fragrant mouth. The macaw rated it at level 7. Link had seen legendary mental strength users in his previous life. Comparing it to Grace's, it should be between level 10 and level 12. Just now, the Underground Research Center was conducting an experiment. It's a piece of equipment that can increase mental power. You won't be able to guess who the terrifying mental power you were talking about came from. Link's words piqued Grace's interest. Grace thought carefully about Link's subordinates. None of them seemed to have outstanding mental power. Could it be the general himself? In the end, Grace came to such a conclusion. You'd never guess, Link shook his head. The mental power boost came from the macaw. Grace's eyes widened in disbelief. That fat and talkative parrot. Grace's tone was extremely surprised, mainly because the image of the macaw in her mind didn't match the terrifying pressure. Imagine the spiritual projection of a giant macaw appearing in the sky. Would it be scary or comical? However, seeing Link's serious nod and confirmation, Grace took a long while before she squeezed out, "This is really unbelievable." Grace knew that the macaw's movement speed had been increased by Link's alchemy technique, but she didn't expect it to have a mental ability on top of that. Link had managed to pull off so many tricks on a simple-minded macaw. Thinking back to how she had been trying to surpass Link, she felt that her thoughts were laughable. The notebook that Grace had been about to take out was now crumpled. She hid it behind her back, afraid that Link would see it. Originally, Grace still had many questions. However, after hearing Link's Versailles speech, she was struck down. Her doubts were not worth mentioning in front of Link's life alchemy. She might even be considered childish by Link if she told him. Seeing that Grace was distracted, Link couldn't help but ask, "Do you have something to say? I see you're out of your mind." "It's probably because I didn't have a good rest these days," Grace quickly denied. "It's just a small problem. Speaking of research, I saw that you've been buried in the villa since you came back. Did you have any new results?" Grace did not expect Link to take the initiative to ask about this. Her eyes brightened and she led Link to the Misty Villa's experimental area. Link had only been to the Misty Villa once after it was completed. However, ever since Grace had settled in, Link had never returned. As he followed Grace into the manor, Link noticed that many places had changed. The first was the garden of the villa, which had been expanded and transformed into a breeding ground. There were some heartless people walking around aimlessly and irregularly. Some of them could be clearly seen to have been transformed by alchemy rituals. Some new abilities had appeared, such as the ability to move quickly and flexibly, and the flexible tongue of a frog. There were also giants with elongated legs but slender limbs like bamboo poles. Link nodded. Regardless of the effects of these alchemy creatures, they would at least provide him with a lot of creativity and prototypes in the future. After walking past the pen yard, Grace's large-scale experimental field was at the back. Because the Misty Villa was built against the mountain, the entire experimental field was divided into two parts, the external building and the cave. Grace showed Link around some of the alchemy rituals and experiments she was conducting. The blackboards and draft papers were filled with alchemy equations and transformation conclusions. Link had read Grace's alchemy notes before, but he was still dazzled by all these strange characters and symbols. Coupled with Grace's explanation, it made Link recall the feeling of listening to heavenly books in class. He couldn't help but feel dizzy and sleepy. "General, as a master of life conversion, can you help me see if there is any room for improvement in these alchemy plans?" Grace asked sincerely. Link suddenly came to his senses. He didn't know any alchemy at all. His life conversion master skill was purely supported by the hive's reconstruction function. Now that Grace was asking for guidance, if she couldn't give a proper explanation, it would be easy for her subordinates to think that Link was hiding his strength. If they were to develop bad emotions, it would be difficult to lead the team. Link furrowed his brows as he tried to think of a solution. Grace caught Link's expression. Her heart tightened, thinking that her alchemy method was too crude and not enough for Link. However, she had to ask. Link was probably in a difficult position and was trying to find the right words. The atmosphere suddenly became awkward. Even the Heartless, who was tied to the experiment table, had stopped whimpering. His eyes, which were hung by a polyp, twitched with difficulty, trying to avoid this embarrassing scene. After a while, Link's eyes brightened. He had found the perfect excuse. "In fact, I think you should take the path you're good at instead of studying the transformation of life." "A path you're good at?" Grace was puzzled. "A path you're good at?" Seeing that Grace had taken the bait, Link said in a serious tone, "Think carefully. You're a mental ability user, and you learned alchemy later. Your alchemy path has always been life transformation. This is the key to your survival, but it's not something you're good at. You should combine your two abilities to form a unique alchemy direction, and the alchemy products can also be close to the spiritual type." Grace was suddenly enlightened. He had been attacked by a nuclear bomb and had survived by using alchemy. From then on, Grace had a mindset that she would continue to study the life transformation of alchemy. As for her original mental type special ability, it had been thrown to the back of her mind. Other than a few skills, it was useless. After witnessing Link's miraculous life conversion, Grace was even more interested in the highest level of life conversion. However, from this point on, she abandoned her previous path and began to learn from others. Now that Link had pointed out the problem, Grace finally reacted. Wasn't her greatest advantage the combination of her mental energy esper ability and alchemy? On the path of life conversion, no matter how much energy she put in, she could never surpass Link. However, there had yet to be anyone on the path of combining mental esper abilities with alchemy. This was a brand new path. "Thank you for your advice, General Lin. Without your advice, I might have to continue on this wrong path." Grace was sincerely grateful. The combination of her spiritual discipline and alchemy would allow her to climb to the same level as Link. If she followed Link, she would never be able to surpass him. Link's words kept echoing in Grace's mind like a deafening bell. Link's system also received a notification, showing that Grace's loyalty had increased by 10 points, reaching 95 points in one go. That's fine. Link didn't expect that his selfish words would raise Grace's loyalty by 10 points. Link's original intention was for Grace to create more spiritual alchemy products. This way, he would be able to pull these creatures and synthesize them later on. He could also stuff them into the fetters of the spirit network, making them more effective. In the end, his words opened the door to a whole new world for Grace and even earned her a lot of loyalty. This was something that Link had never expected. "Don't tell me I really have the potential to be a great swindler." With this, the distance between Link and Grace was shortened. Even before Link could say anything, Grace promised that if she created a new alchemy product of the spirit element in the future, she would invite Link to appraise it at the first opportunity. Although this trip to the Misty Manor was as confusing as the environment there, he had accidentally increased Grace's loyalty and gained her promise. It was a huge profit. After leaving the Misty Villa, Link hummed a little tune as he returned to the castle. Today, he had solved yet another problem. At the same time, Link was curious as to what kind of alchemy creature would be created from the combination of spirit type and alchemy. At night, Link had a video conference with the think tank members to discuss the Wasteland Gang's attack strategy in the early, mid, and late stages. In Link's eyes, the Wasteland Gang's threat level was much lower than the Machinery Faith. The Machinery Faith was full of faith due to its religious influence. In addition, the unique and top-tier machinery technology on Wasteland Planet, as well as the machinery city that had been standing in the Goria Grand Canal for 30 years, had put a lot of pressure on Shandu. Now that the entire Goria Grand Canal had been recovered, the threat in close proximity no longer existed. Whether it was the people of Shandu, the military, or even the Freedom Federation, they all heaved a sigh of relief. There were many warlords in the southern desert. After the collapse of the national system of the Liquidation Day, they formed their own army and became kings. After feeling threatened, they formed the Wasteland Gang to keep each other warm. This force had been in the southern desert for many years and had a deep foundation, but in essence, they were still the remnants of the old party who were greedy for power and refused to embrace the new era. The only advantage they had over Sand City was their military strength. However, after Link destroyed the Machinery Faith, military strength was no longer a concern. On paper, the Sand City seemed to have fewer troops, but as long as Link's pet army was present, no one could underestimate the Sand City. To deal with the Wasteland Gang in the southern desert, Link could have led his army south and taken them down in one fell swoop. However, the price of fighting head-on was too great, and according to Penny's calculations, the benefits were the smallest. In order to maximize the benefits, he had to mobilize the enthusiasm of the players and make them travel back and forth. Due to the battlefield's incident at the battle at the Goria Canal, Link decided to let the players be the protagonists of the attack on the Wasteland Gang while he controlled the situation behind the scenes. The last time they cut the leaks was purely an accident. This time, they had to let the players have a taste of sweetness, or it would be difficult to lead the team in the future. Just as Link and the think tank were discussing the details, the silent Wasteland Gang was actively trying to save themselves. The southern desert, Aisha. At night, the cold wind howled, blowing the tent, as if countless ghosts were wailing. In the tent, the 5 warlords with the highest authority in the Wasteland Gang sat. The leader, Sangbo, had an ashen face. He glanced at the other warlords at the table and also had an ugly expression. Now that the Machinery Faith has been destroyed, it's our turn. Although we've built high walls on the edge of Essia, these things can't stop the footsteps of the Sand City at all. The bald warlord Murin's eyes widened as if there was something terrifying in his eyes. Murin, why are you panicking? Although the Battle of Shandu established the position of the Desert Overlord, it is not as solid and invulnerable as an iron plate. Warlord Situang's expression was calm as he sat on the fishing platform. What the F***ck are you pretending for? Murin cursed angrily. It's not like you didn't F***ing see the images I arranged for the drone to capture last time. Your F***ing territory is the southernmost, and you were the one who was the most frightened last time. Now you're acting calm in front of me. To be honest, have you already thought of a way out? If you can't win, you're going to go out to sea to hide. Baldy Murin's words were a critical hit, and Situang's face turned ashen. Am I that kind of person? Situang slammed the table and stood up. Murin snorted. You know it yourself. You've always been the loudest and the least energetic. 11 Tuang, Gan Tien Mother, I didn't give out 1/3 of the territory for fairness. Now you say I did the least. Everyone, come and judge. The two of them argued until their faces were red and their necks were thick. Their spittle was clearly visible under the light of the tent, sparkling and translucent. Bang! Bang! A thunderous slap on the table rang out, and all the warlords' hearts tightened. Enough! All of you are quarreling until your faces and ears are red. What kind of appearance are you looking at? Is this the time to bring up old scores? Shandu has recently entered a state of development, and it seems that it won't be long before they're sharpening their knives and gathering their troops to the south. The enemy hasn't even come yet, but they've already become chaotic. Sang Bo, the head of the military tent council, glared at them. The bald Marin and Sichuan, who had just argued, both lowered their heads like underlings who had done something wrong and did not dare to say anything. When the atmosphere returned to normal, Sang Bo's tone gradually eased. He turned to look at the woman in the military uniform on his left. "What do you think, Murley?" Murray took out the folder he brought and distributed it to the other 4 warlords on the table. "It's not advisable to fight against Sand with brute force. Now that Link's reputation was at its peak, any large force that fought against the Sandu Desert would only end up dead. But it's not that we don't have other ways. The Wasteland Gang has ruled in Asia for almost 100 years and carried out various human experiments. We have cultivated a large number of Chinook death soldiers. Right now, Link has set his sights on the south while also focusing on the development of the north. He wants to strengthen trade relations with Dragon City and the Magic Knight. In my opinion, he has a big goal. In addition, the Gale Desert has been recovered, and the trade in the desert is becoming more and more frequent. We might be able to take this opportunity to plant new spies in the Sand City and send a team of mutants to kill Link." Kill Link. Once this idea was proposed, everyone was shocked. The bald warlord Marin was the first to shout, "How did our previous spies die? I'm afraid they were all caught before they even got close to the sand. There's no spy in Shandu now, so they don't have any identities to carry out any activities." "Who said we don't have a mole in Sandu?" Mali asked. Chapter 488 Platinum Hotel and the Wasteland Gang join forces. Everyone was shocked and looked at the leader of the Wasteland Gang, the biggest warlord, Sang Bo. The expression on Sang Bo's face also became a little unnatural. "Don't look at me, I didn't know about this either." Sang Bo looked at Murley, the only woman in the warlord seat of Asia. "Have you forgotten about the Platinum Hotel that issued the highest wanted order for Link? He's strong, but he still has to think twice before going up against the Platinum Hotel." Upon hearing the name of Platinum Hotel, the remaining few people got up excitedly. "You've contacted Platinum Hotel?" "It was the Platinum Hotel who contacted me," Malay said with a smile. "What do you mean?" Everyone was filled with anticipation. That was the Platinum Hotel. Although it was only a few hotels, it had a respected status on Wasteland Planet. The assassins inside were fearsome and powerful, even above the Federation and the major forces. After all, if they offended a major power, both parties would have to weigh the pros and cons before they made a move. However, after offending this kind of assassin force, who could guarantee that their sleep every day would be foolproof? Or if the security was really tight, who could stop the nightmare from entering one's dream to kill, or the Shining who suddenly flashed in front of one and dealt a fatal blow? Not to mention the #1 assassin on Wasteland, John, who had made a name for himself before he retired. The Platinum Hotel was like a dark cloud hanging over the heads of all the rich and powerful. Once they were targeted, the days of being on tenterhooks and unable to sleep at night were definitely not a life for humans. He had to be careful of anyone he was familiar with, for fear that they were all disguises. They were even more concerned about their food, worried that they might be poisoned for no reason. He had to be careful when he traveled, afraid of any assassination that might appear at any time. He couldn't even sleep well, worried about the nightmare that would appear in his dreams at any time. Mary crossed her legs and flipped her short hair that had just reached her earlobe. She said unhurriedly, "Some time ago, people from the Platinum Hotel appeared on my territory. Guess what? They actually came to me and said that they wanted to work together to deal with Link. After we talked in detail, we found that Derek was under a lot of pressure. Right now, the Platinum Hotel in Shadow was basically surrounded by Link. The situation was not good. Although Lin K did not make a move, he had already started to shake the foundation of the Platinum Hotel, the Monster Synthesis Company. It was a company that mainly rented and sold animals, and its main focus was the various pets under Link. Its power and effects were needless to say. Other than that, when the expenditure reached a certain level, one could also issue orders. This model was completely derived from the Platinum Hotel, but it was better. Without an assassin, it was impossible to guard against all kinds of pets. Even if the mission was exposed, the financial backer would not be afraid of the risk of revealing his identity. Moreover, it had been proven countless times before that Link's pet was powerful. Even Dragon City and Magic Knight were fighting to buy it, and the upper city of Sandal was all over the place. What was even more outrageous was that Monster Security Company had begun to expand some time ago, opening branches in Dragon City, French Knight, and even the Scattered Lands. With such strong influence and reputation, it would be snatching business from the Platinum Hotel and breaking their foundation. The Platinum Hotel had existed since the old era and was unrivaled in the present era. There had been similar organizations in the past, but none of them had exceeded the scope of the Platinum Hotel. However, it was different this time. Link's strength and ambition made Derek feel threatened. If this went on, the Platinum Hotel in Shandor would become a joke without Link's help. They would lose business completely and be wiped out of the city. This is also the reason why Platinum Hotel took the initiative to seek cooperation. Mary explained the whole situation. At first, she didn't expect the Platinum Hotel to contact her, but after the other party expressed their concerns, Merle reconsidered the necessity of cooperation. The impatient Marin took the lead and asked, if the Platinum Hotel wants to make a move on Link, why don't they just do it? Why would they want to cooperate with us? We're hundreds of kilometers away from Shandu. Are you stupid? Merle continued. If the Platinum Hotel takes action and fails, Link will have something on them. The entire Platinum Hotel in Sandal will be destroyed. The underground black market that Derek has built for more than 30 years will also be destroyed. Sangpo signaled Marin to shut up. He was already interested in the plan of the Platinum Hotel. If Platinum Hotel can't do it themselves, then we'll need another knife. If I'm not wrong, the Wasteland Gang is the sharp knife. But what method is Derek going to use to make this sharp knife appear in Shandor without anyone knowing? The corners of Merle's mouth curled up, and she revealed a meaningful smile. The Platinum Hotel has the channels and means to send our people to Shandu and provide legal identity information. This is their sincerity in cooperating. That's why, Sang Buletin said, with this clean identity, our people can reappear in Shandu and understand every move in Shandu from the inside. They can also organize an assassination plan. Even if they fail, everything will have nothing to do with the Platinum Hotel. What a great way to kill with a borrowed knife. Marin's tone was filled with grievance as he spread his hands and said, then aren't we rich guys now? But we do have a reason to kill Link, Sangbo replied, smiling. I'll leave the selection of Shinnok warriors to you, Sangbo said to Mary. I'll give you full authority to connect with the Platinum Hotel. I won't force the assassination, but I need to put our people in as soon as possible to understand the current situation and information in Shandu. Mary stood up and saluted with a serious expression. Sangbo, don't worry. I'll definitely complete the mission. By the way, I have one more question. If you want me to choose a Shinnok warrior, can I choose anyone? Everyone was stunned when they heard what Mary said. Marin was the first to react and quickly slipped out of the tent. Don't even think about hitting on my bodyguard, no way. The others immediately reacted and sneaked away, not giving Merle a chance. One must know how rare it was to have a reliable bodyguard in Aisha. Mary's eyes focused on Sangbo. Sangbo smiled helplessly. He was the warlord of the Wasteland Gang and the most powerful person. If you want to use him, I agree. General Sangbo is so generous, Malay said. With that person's participation, I believe the plan will be very successful. Yes. Sangbo squeezed out a smile. As you wish, it'd be best if you succeed. Chapter 489 The Suicide Squad. The talks at night were very effective, and the Wasteland Gang seemed to have grabbed onto a life-saving straw. If they wanted to kill Link, they would need a detailed plan. This was because the moment they attacked, it would be their last chance to attack. However, after arriving in Shandu, they could use their normal identities to collect information from all aspects of Shandu, which was definitely a great advantage for the Wasteland Gang. Ever since the intelligence department of Shandu swept away all the spies of the Machinery Faith and the Wasteland Gang, they were completely blind to the situation in Shandu and had no internal information. They could only gather information from the front-line sentries or from afar using drones for further analysis. It was because they didn't understand that the Wasteland Gang was afraid of the sand. This time, the Platinum Hotel felt a sense of crisis and took the initiative to contact the Wasteland Gang. The two sides hit it off and each got what they needed. After Merle obtained the authority to form a Chinook squad, she began to recruit members from Asia. Due to historical reasons, the Wasteland Gang had a large number of superpowered people. Of course, it wasn't because of the good feng shui, but because the Wasteland Gang accepted the joint pharmaceutical company's drug trial cooperation. The so-called drug trial cooperation was to cooperate with pharmaceutical companies to open laboratories and branches in the Wasteland Gang to conduct research and experiments on human mutation and evolution. For this reason, in addition to the protection fees given to the warlords, the joint pharmaceutical company would also give something called research funding, which was a human head fee. The Wasteland Gang was the world of the warlords. To put it bluntly, the warlords were the local emperors. Other than the mercenaries who could be considered human, the natives they captured were not even human. They were more of a form of labor force and resources. Selling these cheap resources to the United Pharmaceutical Company for them to carry out human genetic mutation research was one of the important sources of funding for the Wasteland Gang. After the human experiments, the United Pharmaceutical Company would only record data and samples and would not accept these new mutants. They would also implant self-destructive chips in the brains of these mutants and return them to the warlords of the Wasteland Gang, becoming an important force for the warlords to maintain their rule. Such a stable, orderly, and profitable cycle, the warlords naturally agreed with both hands. After decades of development, there was now a trend in all of Asia. That was, as long as one's family was sent to the joint pharmaceutical company, successfully mutated and survived, then they would be put in an important position by the warlords, and the whole family would rise to heaven. Poverty and suppression had already caused the ordinary people of Asia to develop abnormal values, and they were willing to bet their lives on their future. It could be seen how miserable the lives of the people at the bottom were. In Shandu, the United Pharmaceutical Company could only tuck their tails between their legs. They did not dare to do large-scale human experiments. They could only attract some people who were at the end of the road or who were unwilling to be mediocre to volunteer for the experiments through low-key publicity. They also kept a close eye on these ability users. Previously, Lin Ke had also taken the gene repair fluid from the United Pharmaceuticals and was targeted by them. However, in the blink of an eye, Link had become the leader of the Shitu. The pharmaceutical companies had stopped all projects for a short period of time and entered a state of playing dead. They were afraid that Link would find an excuse to deal with them. After the meeting, Merle went straight to the joint pharmaceutical company of Asia. The United Pharmaceutical Company had the information of all the mutants in the Wasteland Gang. You could get the information here no matter what kind of mutant you wanted to find. Mary was in a military uniform with short hair and looked valiant. She was one of the 5 warlords of the Wasteland Gang as a girl, and her methods were ruthless and swift. Marin and Sichuan even gave Merle the nickname Witch behind her back. After Mary arrived at the United Pharmaceutical Company, she went straight to the office without any greetings. "What brings you here?" The manager of the branch was a little surprised. It was known that Merle rarely came to the joint pharmaceutical company, and she was not the warlord in charge of the civilian experiments. Mary sat on the sofa with her fingers crossed and her body leaning forward. "I need some information on high-level superpowered people for an important mission." Seeing this, the branch manager didn't ask much. He directly asked his subordinate to bring the tablet and then handed it to him with both hands. "General, all the information on the high-level adepts is here. Please take a look," after which, he retreated to the side. The manager had heard of the nickname Witch Merly. When this crazy woman was doing things, he just had to follow her orders obediently. He did not want to talk back or understand what kind of mission she was carrying out. The reason why the manager could work in the joint pharmaceutical company's Asia branch for more than 10 years was that he had no curiosity. Mary picked up the tablet and started to browse through the options with a serious expression. It was Marley who was in charge of the arrangements at the Platinum Hotel, the proposal at the Wasteland Gang meeting, and she knew that this was a rare opportunity. No matter how well connected the Platinum Hotel was, it was impossible for them to send people in safely every time. This was why Marley was looking forward to this one and only opportunity. A complete assassination team should include the ability to deal with any special situation. Therefore, it was imperative for Marley to form the most well-rounded team in the limited space. As for the assassination, Sangbo's bodyguard will be there, so it shouldn't be a problem right now. The most important thing to do is to ensure and assist the infiltration. Mary looked at the tablet and browsed through the information about the mutated humans. Secret travel, a reality-type ability user. Able to physically travel through physical objects. Able to bring up to 3 teammates with you to travel through physical objects. Trembled sound, an energy-type ability user. Creates a barrier with a radius of 100 meters around the user. The barrier can absorb any sound energy. Spiritual child, a psychic ability user with a short-term premonition ability. It can predict what will happen in 30 seconds. Lady Ghost, an illusionary/reality esper. She's good at constructing illusions and can switch between illusion and reality at will. The Nameless Soldier has no special abilities. He has a powerful disguise technique, is proficient in all kinds of firearms, and has excellent battlefield adaptability and command ability. After looking through the list, Marley finally picked out a few people. I'm just curious. Doesn't your joint pharmaceutical company carry out genetic modification for normal people? Why are there still normal people with no abilities in the database? Marley waved the tablet in her hand. The last interface was the Nameless Warrior. The manager took 2 steps forward, not too far away from her. United Pharmaceutical Company is committed to researching the effects of genetic mutation on the human body. This Nameless Warrior was very strong, but there was no way for him to adapt to his body's ability. However, he was still able to occupy a place among the high-level adepts with his unique abilities. It's really surprising that you chose him. Mary passed the tablet to the manager. She had already added all the people she had chosen, but there wasn't much information on the tablet. She needed more data to make a final decision. Tell me about the ones I've chosen. Marley placed her hands in front of her chest and ordered like a strong woman. The manager picked up the tablet and looked at it. These high-level ability users were the key results of the United Pharmaceutical Company's research. Although they were not affiliated with the company still tracked and monitored them to observe the influence of their abilities on them. Therefore, the manager was very familiar with the data and experiences of these people. The first one, secret travel. He has been on 5 missions. As a support-type esper, he has been rated highly in several missions. He can carry out missions without any hindrance and there are no communication problems. The overall rating is trustworthy. The second was Zhen Yin, an energy-type ability user. Because he could release barriers, he acted arrogantly and impudently. He had completed 11 missions with excellent results. Overall evaluation, he needed a team leader with excellent leadership skills to control him. The third spirit child was a telekinesis ability user who could predict what would happen in the next 30 seconds. The spirit child was also a powerful telekinesis user. He had carried out missions 15 times and none of the team members had been injured. The fourth ghost concubine could switch between reality and illusion in a small area. The illusion was powerful and could create a large-scale illusion disguise with the vibration sound to confuse the enemy. She had completed the mission 7 times and had succeeded in all of them. The 5th was the Nameless Warrior. He had no abilities, and all his abilities came from himself. It was a soldier who combined command, support, and attack into one. As it had not undergone any drug mutation, it did not have a code name for the time being. It was called the Nameless Soldier. However, many people in the joint pharmaceutical company called him the Disguiser. We have completed 21 missions and all of them were successful. No one in the team died. After the manager read it, he had a question. General, among the people you've picked, there doesn't seem to be a single main offensive player. They're all auxiliary types. I don't need that kind of thing, Malay snorted. Do you think the main force picked from your tablet can compare to the one beside Sangbo? The manager's expression changed when he heard that. So that person is also participating. It seems like we don't need a main force. Mary impatiently reached out her hand and said, "All right, give me their addresses now, and you'll be done here." The manager was also a shrewd old man. Even that person had to make a move. This matter must be a big one. The more he knew, the more unsafe it would be. After a while, the manager handed a few electronic cards to Marley, along with their remote controls. Mally took the card and sneered when she saw the coordinates. Although these ability users were already equipped with powerful abilities, as long as they had the remote control, they were just dogs tied to a rope or tools in the hands of the warlords. If he told them to go east, they would never dare to go west. Mary got up and the men behind her quickly helped their boss put on the military robe. The few people that were handpicked by Mary were often on missions, so they were all in the center of Asia. With Sangbo's message, they traveled without any obstacles. In just a few hours, the 5 of them were brought to Marley. The few of them were a little emotional at first, but when they saw one of the warlord leaders, Marley, and the controller in her hand, their faces all changed. The 5 of them were all adepts with a little bit of fame in Asia, so they naturally knew of Marley's name. This lunatic known as the Witch was the most difficult to deal with among the warlords. They were definitely up to no good this time. Mary leaned forward and said in a domineering tone, "This time, I'm here to give you an important mission, sneak into Shandu. The plan was agreed upon by the generals, so you don't have the power to refuse." When they heard this, they could no longer keep a straight face. The Wasteland Gang's spies and intelligence department in Shandu have been uprooted. If we sneak into Shandu again, what's the difference between that and asking us to die? An irascible man said. Mary glanced at it and chuckled. She really didn't expect that the dog in front of her would actually bark at its owner. You must be Jinayan, right? You're as hot-tempered as the information says. After saying that, he pressed the remote control on his hand. In an instant, Jinayan, who was still in a violent tone, fell to the ground. His body began to twitch and foam came out of his mouth. After twitching for a while, Marley pressed the stop button and fell to the ground like a dog. His body was drenched and his eyes were lifeless as he panted heavily. "This is just a small lesson for you. I hope your temper won't affect the mission." There was no change in Marley's expression. These superpowered people were high and mighty in the eyes of the ordinary people in Asia, but in Marley's eyes, they were not even as interesting as the dog in her manner. "Since I said it's a mission, I won't let you die in vain. We can't afford to have a clean identity and a safe entry into the Shandu. You just have to remember this mission and bring back as much information as you can about the Shandu. Kill Link at the right time." Hearing that they wanted to kill Link, the 5 of them trembled uncontrollably. Their minds went blank, and their throats began to dry up. If they tried to kill Link, would they be able to come back alive? Even the nameless warrior with excellent leadership skills was dumbfounded when he heard the mission to assassinate Link. He had commanded many battles and missions before, but going straight to kill Link was a waste of his time. A person's name was like the shadow of a tree. The 5 of them wanted to kill the Desert Emperor Yingluo. "Don't worry. There's one more participant in this mission. You'll be responsible for assisting him. Let's go. Mali clapped, and someone walked out from behind the screen. Upon seeing this person, the 5 of them gasped. If even he was participating, then this mission was not a joke. It was serious. Chapter Monster Synthesis Master Chapter 489. The night talks were effective, and the Wasteland gang seemed to have grabbed a straw. To kill Link, you must have a detailed plan. Because once they make a move, it is the last time they make a mobile meeting. But after arriving at Shadow, they can use their normal identities to collect Shadow intelligence from all aspects, which is definitely a big plus for the Wasteland gang. Since the Thunder's might of the Shadow Intelligence Department wiped out all the mechanical gods and the Wasteland gang spies, they have been completely blind to Shadow's situation. Without any internal information, everything can only be from the front line post or drone. The news is detected in the distance and then analyzed. Because of their lack of understanding, the Wasteland gang was terrified of Shadow. Feeling the crisis this time, the Platinum Hotel took the initiative to contact the Wasteland gang. The 2 sides hit it off and each got what they needed. Mare got the permission to form a power team and began to recruit members in Asia. The Wasteland gang has a large number of supernatural powers due to historical reasons. Of course, this is not because the Feng Shui is good, but because the Wasteland Help has accepted the drug testing cooperation of United Pharmaceutical Company. The so-called trial drug cooperation is the establishment of laboratories and branch companies in the Wasteland gang to conduct research and experiments on human mutation and evolution. For this reason, in addition to the protection fee for the warlords, United Pharmaceutical will also give a thing called research funding, which is simply the head fee. The Wasteland gang is the world of warlords. To put it bluntly, the warlords are the Earth Emperors. Except for the mercenaries, they are not even humans. They are more of a kind of labor and resources. Selling these cheap resources to United Pharmaceuticals for their research on human genetic mutation is one of the important sources of funds for the Wasteland gang. After the United Pharmaceutical Company conducts human experiments, it only records data and samples, and will not accept these new mutants. It will also implant self-destructive chips into the brains of these mutants and return them to the Wasteland to help the warlords. It has become an important force for warlords to maintain their rule. Such a stable, orderly, and super profitable cycle, the warlords naturally agreed with both hands. After decades of development, the whole Asia has now formed a culture, that is, as long as the family members are sent to the United Pharmaceutical Company, successfully mutated and survived, they can be reused by warlords and the whole family will ascend to heaven. Poverty and repression have caused the ordinary people in Asia to have deformed values, and they will bet their lives for the future. It shows how miserable the life of the people at the bottom is. In Shadow, United Pharmaceuticals can only be a human being with its tail clipped. Large-scale human experiments are not dare to be done. It can only use low-key publicity to attract people who are desperate or unwilling to be mediocre. And closely monitor these abilities. Link had also taken United Pharmaceuticals' gene repair solution before, but it was also targeted by United Pharmaceuticals. But in a blink of an eye, Link became the leader of Shadow, and United Pharmaceutical Company stopped all projects in a short period of time and entered a pretending death mode. I was afraid that Link would find an excuse to deal with it. After the meeting, Marley went straight to the United Pharmaceutical Company in Asia. United Pharmaceuticals has information on all mutants in the Wasteland Help. You can get information on what kind of mutants you want to find here. Marley wears a military uniform with short hair and heroic appearance. She can become one of the 5 warlords of the Wasteland gang with her daughter. Even people like Marunian and Sichuan gave Mare the nickname Witch behind her back. After Marley came to United Pharmaceutical Company, she didn't greet her and went straight to the office of United Pharmaceutical Company. "What brings you here?" The manager of the branch office was a little surprised, knowing that Marley rarely visits United Pharmaceutical Company, and she is not the warlord responsible for the connection of civilian experiments. Marley sat on the sofa, crossing her fingers with her hands, leaning forward. I need some information about advanced abilities to perform an important task. Upon seeing this, the branch manager did not ask much, and directly arranged for his subordinates to take the tablet, and then handed it over with both hands. General, all the information of the high-level abilities are here, please have a look. After speaking, he stepped aside. The manager has heard of Marate's nickname Witch. This crazy woman acts as she pleases, and she just obeys the requirements, don't contradict him, and don't understand what the task is. The manager has been able to work in the Asia branch of United Pharmaceuticals for more than 10 years without any curiosity. Mare took the tablet and began to look through the screen, her expression very solemn. The Platinum Hotel approached, raised at the Wasteland Gang meeting, and was in charge of this matter. Mare knew that this opportunity was rare. Even if the Platinum Hotel has hands-on eyes, it is impossible to safely send people in every time. So for this opportunity, Mare is choosing it with the attitude of having and only once. A complete assassination team should include the ability to deal with any special circumstances. Therefore, in a limited position, as many permutations and combinations as possible to form the most versatile lineup has become a priority for Marate. As for the execution of the assassination, there should be no problem with Sangbo's bodyguard. It shouldn't be a problem without knowing it. Now the most important thing should be the protection and assistance of infiltration. Mare flipped through the tablet to browse information about various mutants. Secret walkers, real-world abilities, can travel through physical matter physically, and can carry 3 teammates through the entity at the same time. Vibrato, a person with energy like supernatural powers, creates an enchantment with a radius of 100 meters from the center. The enchantment can absorb any sound energy. A soul boy, a mind-powered person with a short-term predictive ability, can predict what will happen 30 seconds later. Guiji, a person with illusion/realistic ability, is good at constructing illusion, and can switch between illusion and reality at will. An unknown soldier, no abilities, possesses super-strong disguise, proficient in all kinds of firearms, and possesses excellent battlefield response and command capabilities. Mare rummaged through it, and finally selected such a few people. Curiously asked, isn't your United Pharmaceutical Company carrying out genetic modification of drugs for normal people? Why are there normal people with no abilities in the database? Marley waved the tablet, and finally stayed on the interface as an unknown soldier. The manager walked forward 2 steps, not too far away from Mare. United Pharmaceuticals is committed to studying the effects of genetic mutations on the human body. This unknown soldier is very strong, but there is no mutation direction suitable for his physical abilities for the time being. However, with his unique abilities, he still ranks among high-level abilities. A place. It's really surprising that you can choose him. Marley handed the tablet to the manager. She has added all the people selected just now, but there is not much information on the tablet. If you want to make a final decision, you need more data support. I picked these, let's talk about it. Mare put her hands on her chest, a strong woman commanding tone. The manager picked up the tablet and looked at it. These advanced abilities are the key scientific research achievements of United Pharmaceutical Company. Although they are not affiliated with United Pharmaceutical, the company also monitors them and observes the impact of their abilities. So the manager treasures the data and experience of these people. The first one, the secret mission. As an auxiliary power person, he has a high evaluation in several missions. He can perform the mission without hindrance, there is no communication problem, and the overall evaluation is trustworthy. The second tremolo, the energy-like ability, because he can release the enchantment, so he behaved arrogantly, performed 11 tasks, and achieved all excellent results. Overall evaluation, a leader with strong leadership skills is needed to control him. The third soul boy, a mind-powered person, can predict what will happen in the next 30 seconds, and the soul boy himself is a powerful mind-powered person, performing 15 missions, and none of the team members were injured. The fourth ghost girl can switch between reality and illusion in a small area. The illusion is powerful. With the tremolo, it can create a large-scale illusion camouflage, confuse the enemy, perform 7 missions, and all missions are successful. Fifth, the unknown soldier, no abilities, all abilities come from himself. The soldier who integrates command, support, and offense has not yet undergone drug mutation, so it has no code and is called the unknown soldier. However, in United Pharmaceutical, many people call him a pretender. Performed 21 missions, all succeeded, and none of the team died. After the manager read it, he came up with a question: the generals you have selected do not seem to have a main offensive player. They are all of the auxiliary type. Marley snorted, the main force, I never needed that kind of thing. Do you think the main force picked from your tablet can be compared with the one next to Sangbo? When the manager listened, his face suddenly changed. It turns out that you want to participate, so it seems that you don't need a main force. Marley looked impatient, stretched out her hand and said, okay, now give me the addresses of these people, there will be nothing for you next. The manager is also a good old man, and even that one has to go out. This time the matter must be a big deal. The more you know, the less safe you are. After a while, the manager handed over a few electronic cards to Mare, along with a few people's controllers. Marley took the e-card, glanced at the coordinates on it, and couldn't help but sneered. Although these abilities possess powerful abilities, as long as they have a controller, they are dogs tied to a rope, tools in the hands of warlords. They tell them to go east, and they will never dare to go west. Mare got up, and the men behind her quickly put on military robes for the boss. These people selected by Mare often perform tasks, so they are all in the center of Asia Express. With Sangbo's communication verbal instructions, he went smoothly. In just a few hours, 5 people were brought to Mare. The few people who were still a little emotional, their expressions changed when they saw Mare, one of the warlord leaders, and the controller in her hand. All 5 of them are Asia's famous abilities, and naturally they know Mare's name. This madman, known as the Witch, is the most difficult one among the warlords. It must be nothing good to find them this time. Mare leaned forward, with a strong sense of oppression, and said in a condescending manner, this time I am here to give you an important task to sneak into the sand. The plan was discussed and agreed by several generals, so you did not refuse anything. That power. Hearing this, the faces of several people could no longer be stretched. The spies and intelligence department of the Wasteland Gang in Shadu have been uprooted. Now we are told to sneak into Shadu again. What is the difference between asking us to die? A grumpy man said. Marley glanced at it and chuckled lightly. She didn't expect that the dog in front of her would even yell at its owner. You are the tremolo, you are as grumpy as the information says. After speaking, press the controller on your hand. Suddenly, the tremor that was still irritable just now fell to the ground, and his body began to twitch sharply, foaming at the mouth. After convulsing for a while, Mare pressed the stop button and fell to the ground with a tremor like a dog. Her body was soaked, her eyes gasping for breathlessly. This is just to give you a little lesson, I hope your irritability will not affect the mission. Mare's eyes did not fluctuate. These superpowers in the eyes of ordinary people in Asia did not even have her in Mare's eyes. A dog in the manner is interesting. Since it's a mission, it won't let you die in vain. Entering Shadu safely and a clean identity are essential. You only need to remember this mission and pass back as much information about Shadu as possible. www.mtlnovel.com Assassinate Link at the right time. Hearing the assassination of Link, the bodies of the 5 people present trembled unconsciously, their brains were blank, and their throats couldn't help wriggling and thirst. Assassinate Link, can they come back alive? Rao is an unknown soldier with excellent leadership ability. He was dumbfounded when he heard about the task of assassinating Link. He has commanded many battles and missions, but he went directly to assassinate Link and gave him his tinnitus. The shadow of the famous tree. With just 5 of them, they want to kill the Desert Emperor. Don't worry, there is another participant in this mission, and you are responsible for assisting. Marley clapped her hands and walked out from behind the screen. Seeing this, the 5 of them all took a breath. Even if he participates, then this task is not a joke, it is a real move. Monster Synthesis Master Chapter 490. The bodyguard of Sang Kun, the largest warlord leader of the Wasteland Gang, is known as the Duke of Destruction, who has arrived in 1,000 troops alone. The reason why Sang Kun can become the #1 warlord of the Wasteland Gang is the help of the Duke of Destruction. The Duke of Destruction, a powerful technology-side bounty hunter, a mechanic, possess a variety of advanced weapons and equipment, and the powerful mechanical weapon firepower will not fail even in the face of an entire army. He is not only Sang Kun's personal guard, but also the 3rd-ranked Duke on the Platinum Hotel killer list. No one knows the relationship between Sang Kun and the Duke of Destruction. The Duke of Destruction suddenly appeared next to Sang Kun 7 years ago. With the terrifying firepower of a single man, all the forces of the Wasteland Gang felt a sense of oppression, and even Sang Kun became a waste. The largest warlord leader of the Soil Gang. Other warlords have also tried to provoke discord, or woo the Duke to destroy the Duke with a lot of money, but they can't shake anything with money, women, or power. Destruction Duke, for you. The Duke of Destruction is wearing a grey cloak, the shadow of the cloak covers half of his face, and under the cloak is a dull, metalless armor that tightly wraps the Duke of Destruction. In the light, only the lower half of his cheek was exposed, but it was also a cold metal mask. Marley saw the Duke of Destruction, subconsciously straightening her body, which was obviously different from the previous attitude of lazily leaning on the position. The strength reached the level of the Duke of Destruction. Even if he was a bodyguard, it was enough to be valued and respected by anyone. The 5 mutants who were forcibly recruited in the audience saw the Destruction Duke deity with their expressions astonished. The Duke of Destruction is among the top 3 members of the Platinum Hotel rankings, and is called the Troika along with the Shining and Nightmare, and has far-reaching influence. Even this one had to participate in this operation, and the team members were both excited and trembling for a while. Mare looked at the other 5 abilities, and her tone returned to her previous indifference. Your mission is to assist the Duke in carrying out the mission. You don't need to worry about how to enter the Sand Duke, what identity, this point, someone will give you, take care of it. All you have to do is to return Shadow's information and prepare for the assassination of Link. Marley pointed to the unknown soldier. Pretender, you are the captain of this squad, responsible for arranging the preparation of intelligence and the assassination plan. I don't need to say more about the attack plan, right? The unknown soldier was already calm at this time and placed one hand on his chest. The assassination plan is specified with the Duke as the center. Then he nodded slightly to the Duke of Destruction. It is my honor to be able to perform the task with you. Mare got up, folded her hands, and walked straight out of the camp. Then you take advantage of this time to get acquainted with it. Someone will pick you up to Shadow in 20 minutes. After Mare left, the eyes of the other mutants all focused on the Duke of Destruction. This famous bounty hunter is more mysterious than the Shining and Nightmares, and usually the dragon is not seen at the end. Everyone only knew that the Duke of Destruction was Sang Kun's bodyguard, but few had seen it. But every time the Duke of Destruction appears, it will bring a new story to Asia. The last time he showed up, it was because of the cooperation between the Wasteland Gang and the Mechanical God Cult. At the meeting, Dao Tuo had opposed opinions and wanted to leave the Wasteland Gang, and was eventually reduced to a prisoner by a collective vote. And Dao Tuo's soldiers also set off a rebellion. In the suppression operation, the Duke of Destruction appeared on the scene, and the powerful firepower displayed by one person abruptly suppressed hundreds of troops, allowing people to see the terrifying power of one person. There are also many daunting high bounty missions on the Platinum Hotel rankings. Just looking at the missions gives people a feeling that they are absolutely impossible to complete. But these tasks eventually became the Duke's bounty and points. After Mare left, the atmosphere in the camp relaxed a lot. After these 10 minutes, they also figured it out. Marley holds the controller, which shows that the United Pharmaceutical Company clearly agreed to this matter. Now that the Duke of Destruction is also present, it shows that several high-level warlords of the Wasteland Gang have reached a consensus. Infiltrating Shadow, the plan to assassinate Link is imperative. In front of the plan of the superiors, their personal emotions and voices of refusal can't stir up the slightest storm. Instead of lamenting why you are yourself, it is better to make a plan. With the participation of the Duke of Destruction, maybe you can really complete the assassination mission. Tremble was the most courageous. He tiptoedly walked to the Duke of Destruction and started talking. This is the first time I have seen the real Duke. Hello, I am Tremble. Under the cold mask of the cloak, a low voice came, I have heard of you. Tremble suddenly looked ecstatic and rubbed his hands and said, I didn't expect the Duke to have heard my name, but I didn't expect it. They said that you are more ostentatious and do not go according to plan. The tremolo froze immediately, and the other 4 could not hide their laughter. It turns out that this is famous. The unknown soldier stepped forward, exuding a leadership temperament. Since you have entered Shadow and you have no worries about your status, you are basically unprepared. You are also mutants with a certain reputation in United Pharmaceutical Company. I also have some understanding of your abilities. But in order for the plan to go smoothly and we can come back alive, I still need you to talk about your abilities and hole cards in order to design a more perfect battle plan. The unknown soldier is well known, and he led the team to perform 21 missions, without any failure, and the team members did not die, which is extremely safe. The other 4 people did not shy away, and explained their abilities and effects. But after all 4 of them had finished telling them, and the unknown soldier also narrated themselves, everyone focused on the Duke of Destruction, expecting the Duke of Destruction to tell about his abilities. After all, it is a rare occasion to listen to the Duke who is the 3rd on the killer list and analyze his abilities. The Duke of Destruction stood in place with his arms in front of his chest, and his voice did not fluctuate emotionally, you don't need to know my abilities. Do your own thing, Link, I will deal with it. Although there is no mood swing, but the words of destroying the Duke in the ears of a few people have strong self-confidence. Seeing the embarrassment, the only female ghost girl in the team quickly proposed, since we form a team to perform the task, we must have a name, do you have any suggestions? How about the Destruction Squad? Will it be a bit revealing? The secret agent asked. Everyone said nothing, meaning you said it. Guiji's eyes lit up, why not call it a secret operation? Tremble snorted softly, are you afraid that others will not know that we are on a secret mission? The soul boy on the side turned to look at the unknown soldier, as the captain, you should also put forward your own ideas. The unknown soldier shook his head, I have no idea for now. The little soul boy smiled and said, it's okay, you will have it right away. After that, he began to pinch the time. Less than 10 seconds later, when the unknown soldier looked at the notebook with the information of several people, a flash of light flashed across his head. At the same time, thinking of what the soul boy said just now, he was shocked. You have the ability, something. Foreseeing the future in advance, it is one thing to hear this ability, but it is another thing to experience it for yourself. The soul boy stretched out his hand and gestured to the unknown soldier to say the name. The unknown soldier clapped his hands and attracted everyone's attention, it's better to call the Suicide Squad. After listening to the audience, the tremolo of bluffing immediately clapped their hands and applauded, this is a good name. This mission shows that it is suicide. The name of the Suicide Squad is appropriate. The secret line also smiled, we have things in our heads, Suicide Squad, this name is good. Even Duke of Destruction, who is taciturn and cherishes words like gold, can't help but applaud this name. If everyone has no opinion, then the suicide squad is now officially established. The captain of the unknown soldier, pretender, members of the destruction of the Duke, Secret Walk, Tremble, Soul Boy, and Guiji. According to the words of the unknown soldier, this may be his career. Counting the mission team with the most luxurious lineup in the past and in the future, it is also the strongest mutant team that the entire Wasteland gang can draw. As everyone talked, although the Duke of Destruction was just the one who listened to and rarely spoke, everyone gradually let go of their worship and began to become like teammates. Tremble was the most courageous. He approached the Duke of Destruction and asked in a low voice, "I heard the gossip that you are not only a bounty hunter, a genius mechanic, or a mutant. The Duke of Destruction is famous because of his incomparable mechanics skills, and he is famous for his firepower that is comparable to that of an army. Rumor has it that the Duke of Destruction is not only a bounty hunter and mechanic, but also a mutant. It's just that this news is circulated in the public, and no one can see the Duke of Destruction, let alone verify it." The Duke of Destruction turned his head to look at Tremor, and under his cold mask were a pair of black and hollow eyes. The Duke of Destruction raised his hand, and 3 small metal appeared around him, spiraling around his palm. Flicking his hands at random, the 3 small immediately turned into metal discs, as thin as cicada wings. Janian opened his mouth slightly and couldn't say a word. Although the Duke didn't say a word, he still answered his doubts. He is indeed a mutant that can manipulate metal with magnetic fields. Just as Tremble was about to say something, the soul boy sitting beside him suddenly opened his eyes and got up and looked out of the camp. "We should go." The unknown soldier hurriedly asked, "Who brought us into Shadow?" The soul boy was stunned for a moment, his eyes turned to normal, and his face was surprised. "Platinum Hotel." "Platinum Hotel?" Just before everyone was surprised, there was a rustle of footsteps outside the camp. After a while, the curtain of the camp was opened, and 3 visitors wearing head coverings and face towels came in, showing only one pair of eyes. After the first one came in, he swept around, and his body trembled for a moment. Immediately, he took off his hood and face towel, opened his arms and walked towards the Duke of Destruction. "Long time no see, my friend." The Duke of Destruction got up, his tone still did not bully. "I didn't expect you to come here in person." The other 5 people looked at each other. Although some of them had been to Shadow, they had never been to the Platinum Hotel in Shadow, and they did not know him. But seeing the enthusiasm of this person meeting the Duke of Destruction, his status in the Platinum Hotel would definitely be invincible. After that, the person returned to his senses, and while scanning everyone one by one, he also called out their names clearly. The Pretender, the Secret Walker, the Tremolo, the Soul Boy, the Ghost Girl. "Hello, I am Thomas, the manager of Shadow Platinum Hotel. I will arrange the itinerary and identity of your infiltrating Shadow this time." Thomas finished speaking and raised a signature smile, very friendly. The 5 of them were all shocked. Shadow Platinum Hotel originally had 3 people, namely the owner Derek, the famous first killer John, and the Platinum Hotel manager Thomas. These 3 were called the Iron Triangle back then, and Shadow Platinum Hotel grew out of nothing. Later, the Shadow Platinum Hotel was completed. Derek was called the Underground Emperor of Shadow. John became the first killer to retreat. Thomas also put on a suit and called the hotel manager to entertain the killer and bounty hunter. The 5 were still surprised that it was the Platinum Hotel that brought them into the city, and now they are already amazed at the importance that the Platinum Hotel attaches to this mission, and they even sent the manager Thomas. If you have to count, John retires, and Thomas is the number 2 figure in the Shadow Platinum Hotel. If you use one word to describe the feelings of the 5 people now, it is flattered. Thomas finished speaking, and turned to continue talking to the Duke. "I didn't expect Sang-kun to attach so much importance to this action. www.mtlnovel.com. Actually, even you were on the court." The Duke of Destruction rarely made an emotional voice. "If this mission is successful, then the next crisis of the Wasteland gang can be resolved. The corner of Thomas's mouth rose. Similarly, there are also ours. The bluffing Tremolo stood up again at this time. Manager Thomas, I'm sorry to ask. Please say. I remember that the Platinum Hotel issued a most wanted order before. Killing Link can be rewarded with huge rewards. Don't know if you can count it. Thomas laughed and said, of course you count. As long as you succeed in this mission, the reward can be redeemed. The reward points are enough to make you a celebrity in the Waste Saturn killer circle. The 5 are in Asia, and all they do are bounty hunters and killers. On weekdays, listening to the killer rankings and various changes in the rankings, I feel enthusiastic, but I am sorry that I did not join the Platinum Hotel as a member. But this time, as long as the mission is successful, they can not only become famous in Shadow, but even the entire Waste Saturn, and become the focus and celebrity of the killer circle. All 5 people's eyes were full of expectation for a while. Thomas looked at the watch time. Gentlemen and ladies, the time is almost up, it's time to act. In the car I will tell you some of the current situation in Shadow and your identity, so that you can understand the current situation in Shadow. Circumstances also facilitate your tasks. The 6 people followed Thomas and got on an armored vehicle. Outside the car is the night breeze roaring in the desert, and in the rearview mirror are the lights of Asia like a gathering of fireflies at night. Inside the car, Thomas is talking.